it is that time. If it is Sunday, it's the Captain's Cast. Let's go. We gotta go. Why, hello. Welcome to the Captain's Cast. I am your host, Captain Garrett, here on the Swords and Starships channel. Do you want to talk about Star Wars? I kind of am in a mood. I'm in a mood. And I want to share with you something that will, on the subject of Star Wars, for a change, actually feel good. Because I came across something magnificent. You know, like you, I occasionally find things on the internet. And it's one of those rare occasions where I have found something good for you. And we're also going to talk all the top topics of the day. Gen V, I continue to watch and like, which I don't know, that might be a polarizing topic. I'm here for it. I'm excited. I'm going to talk about Gen V, why I like it. Just the captain's chair. Captain's chair is not an appropriate posturepedic alignment. And I want to talk about, this is a bit of a Star Wars themed show because I want to talk about where we are and where we could be. And we'll also get into a couple of trailers. We've got the Loki Shills. The Loki Shills have poor Grizzy. I don't. I hope he understands. I'm promoting his channel here, so maybe we'll check out the Loki Shills. I'm not watching Loki. I can't do this shit, folks. I can't do this shit. It's like, listen. You, my dear beloved audience, mean more to me than you will ever know. And I will suffer for you. Your captain will suffer for his crew. However, what is there to suffer for with Loki? There's just nothing happening. I at least need something to happen in these shows for me to, get excited about it. Star Fury's in the chat. Speaking of the crew, hail Star Fury. Welcome aboard. And Tom, as you were, sir, as you were. Fu Man Blue, hail. Yes, carry on. Welcome aboard, my dear crew. Fu Man Blue is also enjoying Gen V. And you are in good company, sir. I have more thoughts on it. And I welcome this crew welcomes dissent. So if you disagree with Gen V, please do let me know. And where we are with Star Wars, up shit creek without a paddle. Well, Star Fury, I'm glad you brought that up because there is a YouTube channel called Prism, and they create videos of essentially what could have been. And what I want to talk about is what if Star Wars Episode 7 had been good? What might that have been like? So this is going to be partially a reaction stream. That's right. I am converting this to a Prism reaction channel. I'm reacting to the Prism video, what if Star Wars were good? But before that, I think it's time that we set the table with how low we have sunk. It's funny. I've spent a lot of time on this channel just roasting the shit out of Mandalorian Season 3, Ahsoka, and Secret Invasion, and just all this crap. And honestly, I'm actually kind of shocked by how predictably awful every single one of these things are. Like, every single one. Every single thing they make. And I even have, George Lucas, the lovable, harmless George Lucas actually had a great take a while ago when he did that Charlie Rose interview on kind of how we got here. So I'm going to play that too. So we're doing a little bit of a, you know how they say, this is going to sound grim, but you know how they say at a funeral, it's not a sad occasion, it's a celebration of life. Well, this is sort of a wake for let's have a wake for Star Wars. Star Fury, get your favorite tipple. Let's get drunk. No, I'm just kidding. This is coffee, a very robust blend. Fu Man Blue is in the Rumble chat. That's right, lest I forget. We are live streaming on YouTube, Rumble, and X, formerly Twitter. And soon to be more platforms when I can get the time to figure that out. Starfury says, a tad of a pointless exercise. Aren't we acting like abuse victims with all that? Well, maybe. I don't know. I'll let the chat decide. You shall be the jury, and I will defer to your judgment. No, stick with me on this, Starfury. Stick with me. The captain has a plan here. I wouldn't... Star Wake. I don't know what that is. I don't know what's happening there. Oh, Star Woke. Okay, gotcha. There you go. So, and we have some other things in the stack of stuff. Should we do a quick warm-up? Just to get the stream demonetized? We'll just get it out of the way. You know, I'm tired of waiting around for it to get demonetized, so we'll just do it. We'll just do it live. I would rather be entertained and entertain you than worry about monetization. We'll worry about that later. So details. Okay, here we go. So there is a new trailer. I have not seen this, so we're going to react to it live. For Napoleon on Netflix. So here we go.
We are discovered. Good. Wait! Nice! It's a trap! Retreat! I'm not built like other men.
Generals gathered in their masses.
Move along now!
Those in power only see me as a brute, unfit for higher office.
Just like witches at black masses.
But I follow in the footsteps of Alexander the Great and Caesar.
Evil minds that plot destruction.
If you look down, you'll see a surprise. Once you see it, you will always want it.
Oh, the French. You gotta love them. I'm just making sure I'm not getting blocked here. Okay, cool. What is with all of the vintage rock music in all of these trailers? I don't like this. I don't like this mashup of modern music with... Look, Napoleon might have been a kind of political rock star of his time. I don't think that means we have to take that literally. I'm very torn in two directions with this trailer, because on the one hand, Joaquin is looking great in the role. The period is looking excellent. The battles are looking kinetic and exciting. But how can I describe this? Like, how can you put this? It's almost like the J.J. Abrams lens flare, shaky cam. You know what it is? It's ADHD filmmaking is what this feels like. At least how it's being presented in this trailer. There's all these fast jump, skippy shots. Oh, look at all this action. As if to say, we know that the 18th century is fucking boring and that you idiots are too stupid to care about the 18th century. So we have to make it look exciting for you, you dumb boobs. That's how I feel when I watch the way they're presenting this. Just show me the 18th century. Just show it to me like it's the Count of Monte Cristo, and I'll be with it. But we continue.
Of death construction.
I must warn you.
Oh,
I will
ship
not
porn.
be the second in command. I will win by fire. I am destined for greatness. I found the crown of France in the gutter and placed it atop my own head.
Ashes where the bodies burn.
I hate this music.
You want to be great, but you are nothing without me. Say it.
This is Ridley Scott, so there's a high chance, at least, that this trailer is mangling what could be a good film, possibly. But this smacks of girl bossery to me. This smacks of Napoleon was an incel, and he did it all because he didn't know how to get along with women. I'm just getting those vibes, okay?
I believe I speak for all of us we will all sleep again without this vermin.
Whose country are we in? Mine.
You know, this just makes me think of the Count of Monte Cristo trailer back in the day, in the early 2000s, one of my favorite films of all time. I'm just wondering how you might compare that trailer.
The best.
Oh, God. I got to get rid of all that. Hang on a second. Let me read some super chats first, because we have a Rumble rant, a $5 Rumble rant. Fu Man Blue says, this is not for talking about Loki. Maybe a little SG-1? Star Wars wakes, or Star Wars wake, Star wake. Do you mean Star woke? I promise we are not going to talk about. We're not going to spend a lot of time on what's bad. Just trust me on this. Just if we get into it and you don't like it, we'll move on. But thank you for that very generous Rumble rant, Fu Man Blue. And there might be some Stargate talk on the horizon. Absolutely. And we have Redoubt Productions in the chat. Hey, I'll take War Pigs over whatever song they're using in the last trailer. I mean, look, it's just this trope, this current modern day trope of like, we've got to make the 18th century look like it's Star Trek 2009, and it's just stupid. It's just stupid. Now I'm going to see if I can find, because I'm not already demonetized enough. Yeah, here we go. Yes, add to stage.
Come on, come on! Good, you finally hit something. Being your friend is always an adventure. Yes, it is, isn't it?
Edmond Dantes had a promising future.
It's kind of using some modern music, so I just got hoisted on my own petard.
That any man would envy.
As soon as I can afford the ring, we'll
I don't need a ring. I don't.
You are under arrest by order of the magistrate of Marseille.
I demand an explanation. It was you? Why are you doing this? It's complicated.
I didn't
Look at that,
understand
sword
why
fights.
Betraying him, but now, having seen his exquisite fiancée, I understand completely.
Betrayal,
I am innocent.
love triangles, an innocent man.
Said is that Edmond Dantes has been executed.
My advice: take solace in the comfort of your good friend.
You were a soldier. Teach me the knife, the sword.
Good. Too good. Smoke of escape. In return for your help, I offer something priceless. The treasure of Monte Cristo.
I will change my identity. I shall become a count.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Count of Monte Cristo.
Count on revenge.
Death is too good for them. They must suffer as I suffered. I'm a count. Not a saint.
The Count of Monte.
Dude, that's a great movie. I love the Count of Monte Cristo. Watch that. But I don't hear a lot of heavy metal rock music in that trailer. I don't think it's necessary. I also don't think that's the best trailer out there. There must be better ones out there. But anyway, you get my point. So Napoleon, boy, am I torn on this one. I am so torn on whether this movie's going to be great. You know what? My guess is, if I had to put money on it, I'd say it's probably going to be mid, a little above mid. Ridley Scott's been very hit or miss lately. This might be sort of a cash a paycheck time for Ridley Scott. I feel like that's what these directors do. They just need to cash a paycheck, so they go and get a Netflix deal. But there's a lot there that looks pretty good. I sure do like Joaquin Phoenix in the role. I don't know exactly what he's channeling all the time. Sometimes I see him kind of like, he's got that kind of muted, quiet performance. I'm thinking, where are you getting that? Like where are you getting that in your studies of Napoleon? I'm open to it. I'm open to it as an interpretation of the character. I just am skeptical. The captain is skeptical, but I will reserve judgment. Now, oh yes, absolutely, Star Fury. The book, The Count of Monte Cristo, better than all cinematic versions. However, if I may take a slightly different tack, if you will, there was one change in the film that the screenwriter made that he felt was something so that made so much sense for Dantes's character. He couldn't honestly believe that Alexander Dumas left it out. Now that's a tad egotistical, I will grant you. However, the change he made was Fernand's son. What the heck was Fernand's son? So, in other words, his enemy's son turns out to actually have been his son, Henry Cavill's character in the movie. Basically, it turns out that was why I'm blanking on her name. Mercedes. So Mercedes and Dantes had a son, but she passed it off as Count Mondego's son. And it's great in the film. It adds a lot of intensity to the drama. It gives a really primal, emotional stake at the end of the film. And that was not in the novel. So I actually think that is a change I'm okay with, because I thought that made it more dramatic and even better. But you're right. You're never going to... Alexander Dumas is an incredible... He's an incredible guy. He really is. He was a mixed race guy in the 19th century in France who made his living writing serial stories in the newspapers. And that's how he published The Count of Monte Cristo. That's how he published, I believe, The Three Musketeers, The Man in the Iron Mask. What an amazing storyteller. Fu Man Blue says, oh, also Cap got it backwards. When he said it was not for talking about Loki, it was for not talking about it. Okay. All right. Look, I think I understand what you mean. Got it backwards. It was not for talking about Loki. It was for not talk. So you're saying you don't want me to talk about Loki. Okay. The only thing we may do on Loki is watch the Shills, because I haven't watched the show. I just don't care about it. This is incredible to me. I have nothing left emotionally for modern Star Wars or modern Marvel, or honestly, at this point, it's pretty much gone for DC as well. As far as I'm concerned, the last greatness that existed in the DC films was the Christopher Nolan trilogy. And even he kind of torpedoed that at the end, because The Dark Knight Rises. I did watch Rises again recently. It's not quite... It was just such a mistake to have Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne be this kind of loser shut up in his mansion. It just didn't make sense. That's the thing that really kills the movie for me. But there's a lot else that's really good. There's a lot else in it that's pretty good. Eric Marr is in the chat. Ahoy, Eric Marr. And Ice, a.k.a. Black Knight, author of the Stars Shatter series, available now on Amazon. Check it out. And I saw you on a Drink with Crazy stream today. I was not able to participate in the chat. I was deep into show prep, but I was there. And Wrangler is aboard. What else we got going on? Well, the chat's just going by. All shill reacts are welcome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Fu Man Blue. So, yes. And so let us move on to the topic of the day. Oh, I do have a couple of recommends for you. It is Halloween season. What should you watch? Well, I'm not like the biggest horror movie connoisseur, but I do like a good scare. I like a good scare once in a while, you know? And so I have two things. I have a Captain Salute and a Captain Scowl. So Captain Salute means watch it. Captain Scowl means avoid it. So first, the Captain Scowl. I started watching this show, Pet Sematary Bloodlines, on Paramount Plus, and I gave it the 5-minute deal, which is, okay, 5 minutes. If I'm still interested, I'll give it another 5. I got about 20 minutes in, and I'm like, This is boring as shit. It's so boring. I don't look. This is one of those weird ones where it's like on paper there seems to be a lot going for the show. That's the town feels very creepy. The main actors are fine. They seem pretty likable. You've got David Duchovny is playing this super creepy father of a returning Vietnam War veteran that he is clearly raised from the dead using the Pet Cemetery, and he's got these just awesome chilling lines that he says to the main character who is going to the Peace Corps because he managed to avoid getting drafted into the Vietnam War. And so David Duchovny's character really just sticks the knife in him about, sort of avoiding getting killed in Vietnam. And it's so there's something kind of there that's pretty exciting. I think this is the problem. And it's a problem with a lot of shows and a lot of movies these days. I'm ahead of it. I know everything that's going to happen. I'm just waiting to see it happen. And it's so boring. It's like, okay, the dog is clearly a zombie dog. It is going on and it's biting her. Okay, great. It's clearly not really his son back from the war. He's clearly a reanimated corpse. He's going to do something evil. Oh, there he goes. He does something evil. It's just so boring. So avoid it. The Captain's Scowl for Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. I'm beyond I used to give a show more than an episode. I don't anymore. It's like you've got one episode, and if it's not good by the end of that episode, I don't care what's in episode 2. Fuck off. I just don't care. So what's next? The Captain will salute, however, on Netflix. There is a limited series. It is one season only. It is called Midnight Mass. Now, well, should I say this? I probably shouldn't say this because it would be a spoiler. It's like the best limited series on Netflix. It's a horror limited series you've never seen. And it hooked me in the first 5 minutes, this show. Now, granted, for some of you, I thought it was a really good hook at the beginning because it really brings you into the main character and you get kind of invested in him. And then but I have a weird obsession with New England. Okay. I have a weird obsession with like Far Harbor in Fallout 4 was like one of the best things I've ever played. It was just so awesome. I want to live in Far Harbor for real. Not Bar Harbor, the wasteland Far Harbor. I would live in that place if I could live anywhere in the Fallout universe. So it's weird. So you got that, but is it New England? I'm pretty sure it's New England. It's like this isolated island in New England, and there's a town with 127 people on it. And that's basically the setting. And this man who has just got out of prison, he's a young man who just got out of prison for killing someone in a drunk driving accident. He comes back to this island. He's kind of trying to put his life back together. It's a very religious town. There's a Catholic church and a Catholic priest, and everybody in the town, for the most part, is a devout Catholic. So you've got this religious element going on, but it's this kind of isolated bottle world because there's this sense of claustrophobia. It is an excellent monster in the house story. If you recall, I am a great fan of Blake Snyder's Save the Cat 10 genres. And so in a monster in the house story, and this is why bad horror movies, I guarantee you, if you see a horror movie and you're like, that wasn't scary or that sucked, it violated one of these rules. And in a monster in the house story, you must have a house, which sounds obvious, but the house in this case can be, it just has to be it has to be a setting that you can't escape from. And the setting doesn't have to literally be a house. It can be a house, or it can be an island that you can't get off of. It can be a space station. It can be, the starship Nostromo where the alien is hunting them, or the house can be the whole planet, such as in Independence Day. Independence Day is a monster in the house story in which the monster is the aliens and the house is planet Earth. So the island off the coast of New England is a perfect house for this monster in the house story. So check it out. I don't really want to say too much. I think you'll probably sniff out what's going on in the story, but there's plenty of twists and there's plenty of fun. And so yes, Midnight Mass. I couldn't put it down. I binged the whole thing. It was fantastic. So check that out. When do we talk about Hunger Games, something stinks? Well, let's just pull that up. You want to talk about Hunger Games? I got Hunger Games for you. Oh, I got all kinds of Hunger Games for you. This is... Oh, I forgot to bookmark the trailer for myself. Let me grab the trailer. Because I've got feelings about this. So, if you don't know, Rachel Zegler is I did not even realize she was in this movie, and I already hated it. Sure. This should do. This is... Why do I even bother? I'm not even... I shouldn't even bother anymore. I'm just here for you, my dear sailors and starnauts.
We're live! Mr. Snow, after everything you've seen out there in the world, what are the Hunger Games for?
Is that Sanji from One Piece? Is that it kind of looks like him.
Are you coming to the tree?
The Hunger Games, they're to punish the districts. Those tributes don't have a choice.
Your role is to turn these children into spectacles, not survivors.
So we both be free.
We're live! Smile. It's why we have teeth.
Imagine it was your name that they pulled.
Strange things can happen here.
I just want to know that somebody still cared about me, that I was still of value.
Welcome to the Capitol.
You look like you shouldn't be here.
I should.
I saw this, not this trailer, but I saw a trailer for it in the theater, and immediately I was like, I am so tired of prequels. I am so sick of prequels, I can't even tell you. You know what this is? This is the latest Hollywood tactic of not having to make... This is the safest play. You know, it's an existing IP. It's already got a built-in fan base, and you don't even have to risk, anything creative, because you can just go back in time and retread territory that we already know from backstory. There's a second trope in this that I absolutely hate, which is that we are following the character of President Snow. We are following the young President Snow, and we're getting to see the origin of a villain. And you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of freaking Sauron in Rings of Power. It makes me think of because we have to see how Sauron became so mean and angry all the time. And it's like, I don't want to see the origin of President Snow. I don't care. He's a dictator. He's an asshole. Just let him exist as a villain. Why do I have to see him as a young man? I don't want to see that. I don't care. I'm not invested in him. And, I saw... This is the reaction I had before I even knew who the hell Rachel Zegler was. I just saw her in this film, and you know what's so funny about her too is, look, she's like got the most forgettable face I've ever seen. Like, it's not that she's unattractive. She has an attractive face, but like something about her, I see her face and it's like, it's invisible to facial recognition. I just don't.
But I'm your mentor.
A rebel.
I take that back.
I'm going to get you out of here.
Something of an unfortunate
You want to protect people, and it's essential to accept what human beings are and what it takes to control them. Let's see you use that famous snow charm.
You seem like a good man, Corleone Snow.
I have seen what war does to people.
Fueled with the terror of becoming prey. See how quickly we become predator? I want my enemies to see a rainbow of destruction engulfing the world.
You're monsters! All of you! Good luck with that poor little songbird.
Where is she?
It's a mystery. And mysteries have a way of driving people mad.
Mr. Snow, let me ask you one final time. What are the Hunger Games for?
hanging.
You know, first of all, the original Hunger Games film series was mid. It was mid at best. That first film I liked. I remember I saw that first film. I had no idea what the Hunger Games was. I never heard of the books, none of it. I watched the movie. I came out of the theater, and my reaction was basically like, oh, it was surprisingly good. That was surprisingly enjoyable. However, I have some complaints. And one of my complaints is it felt like a Disney version of Battle Royale. It felt like it was a safe, sanitized version of a better story. Something like The Running Man, or those classic films about a Thunderdome scenario, right? But with youth. That's not an original concept. That's a pretty, like, the Japanese have done that way better. Way better. Battle Royale, way better. And so I'm thinking this just felt like a safe for Americans kind of version of this story. And I have to say, the author of the Hunger Games, don't remember her name, don't care. She said that her inspiration for the original book was she had read the story about the myth of the Minotaur, the ancient Greek myth of the Minotaur, that, like, you would sacrifice virgins into the labyrinth to let the Minotaur kill them. And that was her inspiration. I thought, well, that's a pretty interesting inspiration. Unfortunately, I don't know much about the books. Maybe they were a little bloodier than the movie, but and I'm not against the character of Katniss and her having the arc of, becoming the spark of the revolution. I'm fine with all of that. I just felt like once they got into the Thunderdome, that was when the movie got boring. I'm serious about this. Like, all the Hunger Games film that I enjoyed was everything leading up to the actual games. Once they got into the actual games, I was bored to tears. I was like, oh, and then there was all these the weird the weird bee stingers, all this the point. It was just stupid. I was like, I would rather see the intriguing, like the intriguing political, backroom dealing that she was having to negotiate her, and seeing her have to, like, elevate herself in the eyes of the elites of this society. And then, of course, I was curious about the districts, and a much more interesting prequel to me would be the world before they became these districts, and then the revolution that led to that, or the coup that took over. That would be a little more interesting to me. But it'd be really interesting. How about just continuing the story? How about just having more of no, but you can't do that, because that would require creativity and inventiveness. And I will tell you something, the final entry in that film series, The Hunger Games, was boring. I can barely remember anything that happened in it. I can vaguely remember Katniss wins in the end. She wins in the end by firing an arrow. That's about the most I can conjure from my memory. They're boring, safe, vanilla, bland. Who cares? Who cares? Erigmar says, modern Hollywood can't seem to pull off a proper suspense horror. They really can't. Well, they have to play it safe all the time. It's really more of the small indie films, like Blumhouse Studios occasionally has a good one. Ugh. What? Let's see. Yeah, we'll put that one up. When Rachel's figuring out she's more hated than some dictators, shall we say, says Star Fury. Look, she is entitled and aggrieved. And look, she has been brainwashed. Like everyone her age, she has been brainwashed to think she has a grievance. She has been brainwashed to blame everyone but herself for all of her problems, and it's an unattractive quality. It's unattractive. Fu Man Blue says, super fucking mid Hunger Games. Anything I stay awake through but would never ever watch again is barely mid even. Yeah, totally. I'm pretty much there with you. The only bad guys allowed to be portrayed now are some sort of terror birds. Yeah, what's up with that? Readout says, I liked the first two books as a teen, but have come to be a bit jaded by the franchise since everyone copied aspects of it. Panel also should not survive as long as it did. I don't know about the books because I never read them. As I mentioned, there were things about the first film and a little bit in the second film that were interesting. There were interesting elements of the world. I liked the odd culture. What would you call it? The 12 districts? I don't know what you call that land. I forget what you call it. But anyway, the world of the Hunger Games. I found the whole media culture, which is becoming somewhat frighteningly prescient, actually. That was all really interesting, and I thought there was a lot of material to be mined there. I just think that the minute they get into that Hunger Games, it gets boring. And I think the reason it gets boring is because it feels like a half measure. It feels like a half measure, that movie, because on the one hand, the concept is excruciatingly horrific. It's excruciating. It's we're going to randomly select by lottery 2 children from every district, and we're going to make them fight to the death. Well, that should be a slam dunk story concept right there. That is a slam dunk, folks. That's a great story. Unfortunately, when we get into the arena, it's a bunch of freaking love triangles. It's like, oh, I'll spare your life and you'll spare my life and we'll work together and we'll beat the odds and we'll twist their arms. It's like, no, a dramatic story would be you have no choice. Who lives, who dies, you choose. And you fucking live with that choice. And it's horrible and it's awful and it crushes your damn soul. And that's the point. That's the point. That's what I hate about it, is that it's a half measure. It's afraid to go the full distance of its premise. That's the problem with the Hunger Games. It's afraid to go the full distance of the premise. And you know why? Because it wouldn't qualify as a young adult novel then, because that would be too scary and that would be too violent. And we can't have that. Just one captain's opinion. So I don't begrudge anyone liking the Hunger Games. I mean, I don't begrudge anyone liking anything. But I mean, I understand liking it. I just felt like it was a letdown for me. It was just a letdown. Yes, the prepping of the tributes. Well, you know why that's the best part? Because at that point in the story, it was going the distance. Like the full, I would argue the most horrific scene in all of the films is when Katniss's sister is selected to go, and she has to make the choice, the sacrifice to volunteer herself. That is the most suspenseful that film ever is, I think. That is, when they're actually being lifted into the arena, that might actually be the most suspense. And then after that, it's all downhill. But up to that point, everything was pretty good. It was how you're going to survive. What's your strategy going to be? You're not going to make it if you don't get backers. You're going to need medical supplies. You gotta schmooze with these evil wacko rich people. That was all pretty interesting because at that point, I felt the plot was going the full measure of the distance. Then they get in the arena and they start the plot allows them to sort of worm their way out of things that in reality undermines, frankly, it kills the whole franchise, because if I don't see something fucking terrible happen in that arena, like something awful, something that shocks me, if I don't see that, I don't buy the whole threat level of this entire world. I don't buy the threat level of President Snow, despite the excellent performance of Donald Sutherland. I don't buy the intimidation factor. I don't buy the moral stakes and the level of sacrifice that's being asked of the characters. And so it's a damn shame is what it is. And it's why I am not a young adult fiction writer. I just am not. The captain, and the captain is a writer himself, Blood and Oak, 2 novels in the series, more on the way. The link is in the description, www.bloodandoak.com. And in my story, it goes the full measure. Let's just put it that way. It's got to be, it's about slavery on the Barbary coast at the hands of the Barbary Pirates. And there's no half measures. It's like, I'm going to show the reader how fucking awful this would have been. And I'm not pulling any punches. And I was even a little afraid I did pull some punches. But fortunately, the feedback I got was I probably went farther than I needed to. So that's just me. Now, I have nothing against young adult novels. They're fine. I can't write them, though, because I can't write things that are that safe and that are that there's got to be something nerve shredding in a novel for me to be interested enough to write it. There has to be something I read and it stays with me. Like I'll give you a great example. Joe Abercrombie's novel series, the First Law trilogy. That's a low fantasy kind of world. And the way he takes an archetype or a trope and he turns it on its head and he shows you something shocking that you could never have predicted was going to happen. It's like sometimes for the good and sometimes for the bad. It goes both ways. Sometimes you have a morally depraved, hideous character do something shockingly human and benevolent, and you're like, wow, that was amazing. And then sometimes you have a character that's sort of supposed to be the hero that shocks you with like something they do that's either, I don't know, it's just, but this is the important thing. It's always in line with the character. It's always in line with what has been laid out. It's never a cheap twist. It's like, no, that was what was always going to happen. It's like once you get to the end other side of it, you're like, okay, yeah, that was where that was always going. And that's the beauty of how he writes, which, by the way, Rian Johnson, that's how you actually subvert expectations. So check out Joe Abercrombie's books. They're really good. Eric Marr, he goes the full measure. Black Knight goes the full measure in his books. The slavery in the Star Shatter universe is even more terrible than what we have in our world. Absolutely. Like, look, it's like if you're going there, you got to go there. You got to go there. Readout says the most miserable HG reading viewing experience is Enduring Mockingjay, pain, love triangle, pain. Oh, dude, I swear I cannot remember what happened in that movie. I can't. I just remember like vaguely there was something about she killed someone at the end with her bow that upset the balance of power. That's it. That's all I've got for you. I don't know what else happened in that stupid movie. So anyway. And then Fu Man Blue has a comment in here I wanted to highlight. Where is it? There we go. Yeah, I was pissing myself reading about the Sullivan family being taken. You really nailed all that flashback stuff. Well, thank you, Fu Man Blue. Referring, of course, to my novel, Blood and Oak. The link is in the description, available on Amazon. Thank you, Fu Man Blue. It's very kind words, and I certainly appreciate it. And very much based on my research into history. Like, I researched I read actual accounts of the slavery. And by the way, that wasn't even the worst of it. If you were a galley slave back in the days when the Barbary Pirates rowed their ships with oars, I've studied a lot of different kinds of slavery. And I've come to the conclusion that the worst I can discover in the history of humans, anyway, this is not going into like speculative sci-fi, just the worst slavery I've ever read about was being a rower on a galley, which is a ship propelled by oars. And literally you were chained to a bench 24/7. You ate and shat there until you died. It was truly, they said that the ships, you could smell them. You could smell the ships for miles. It was, and the second worst, I think, would be sugarcane plantations in the Caribbean. I think that would probably be the second worst form of slavery that I've ever read about, because it was basically being worked to death. Of course, well, then you get into World War II. We're not going to go there. But anyway, yeah. I probably went a little overboard with the flashbacks. I feel like I have to reel those in next time. But speaking of a show that does great flashbacks, I was watching One Piece again because I'm working on a video for it. And I'll tell you something. That show does flashbacks better than like 99% of anything I've ever, and better than I even realized, because there's literally moments where there's like the visuals of the flashback and the present moment line up perfectly. Like there's a scene where Luffy is drowning in the present. The clown Buggy is drowning him in seawater, and he's flashing back to when he was a boy and he was drowning in the ocean because a sea monster had just taken out his boat. And there was such a perfect, like, as George Lucas would say, it's like poetry. It rhymes. It rhymed perfectly with the backstory and the present sort of coming together. It's so One Piece, excellent. We're going to be talking more about that. Now, I told you about Mockingjay because I have a headline for you. Try this headline, folks. This for Bounding into Comics. There she is in all her... Look, I'm telling you, nothing specifically unattractive about her. Just like if you saw her in a crowd, would you even know she's a celebrity? I wouldn't. She looks like an average person to me. Okay, Rachel Zegler's The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. What a fucking title. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. What the fuck? What is this? What is this? How many words is that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words? A 9-word title? This is pathetic. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of those Harry Potter spinoffs, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And then it's like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Part 2, The Crimes of Grisdenwald, or whatever the hell it is. And I'm like, what is even the title of this? I don't even know what it is. The upcoming prequel film, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is predicted to have the franchise's worst opening weekend. Well, this looks like a CW show if I've ever seen one. Let's just face it, folks. Box Office Pro recently shared their long-range predictions for the Rachel Zegler film, predicting the film will gross between $35 million and $45 million in its domestic opening weekend. The outlet also predicted the film will only gross between $90 and $142 million in its entire box office run. Folks, this is bad. This is bad. Dude, this chick is like, she has got a goose egg for 3 films. Oh, like, what else has she been in? She's been in, so Snow White is going to tank. This one's going to tank. Do you know why this is going to tank? Because who cares? That's why. It's a prequel about the story is over. The story's over. There's nothing to tell. Look, there's no characters in this we care about. We don't want to see the rise of an evil dictator. You know what it's going to be? I bet you it's going to be that, like, he was a good guy in the beginning and he just got led astray and he kind of went down a dark path. I don't care. I don't want to see that. Also, why is he wearing a dress? What the fuck? What is up with that? This is the thing. You know, we're going to talk about this in a minute, too. George Lucas makes this point about what they got wrong in Disney Star Wars. And he said, well, you know, Star Wars is about the Skywalker. It's a family story. It's about the family. Star Wars is about the family. And he's right about that. It's about the family. And if it's not about the Skywalker family, if we're moving the story forward, it is at the very least a story about people and their relation. You know, I was even just thinking, Star Trek is a human story, okay? Star Trek is a story about humanity, okay? Star Trek is a story about humanity. Star Wars is a story about humans. It's a story about human relationships. It's about human family. And I think that Star Trek is much more of a story about a society, a culture, a civilization, and exploring that. It's about exploring the human soul, and I feel like Star Wars is about exploring the human heart, which might just be a bunch of pedantic gobbledygook, but I'm going to stick with it anyway, because this is the Captain's Cast, live on Swords and Starships channel, YouTube, Rumble, and X, formerly Twitter. Please do like and subscribe. And Rachel Zegler is headed for pain, folks, because the previous worst opening weekend in the Hunger Games franchise was 2015's The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. And the film grossed a total of $102 million in its opening weekend. It went on to make about $281. That ain't much, folks. That is not much. I thought that film did well, if I recall, but I guess not. The original Hunger Games film had an opening weekend of $152 million, went on to gross $408 million. You know, back in the days when you were just making a film as cheaply as you could, see if you can make it a blockbuster and build on that. $408 million now is like what they throw at some no-name writer who's never written anything to do a Marvel movie. That's like $408 million. They go get some director who's got like 3 credits for Jimmy Kimmel Live, and they say, hey, here's $400 million. Go make us a $1 billion movie. It's so stupid. It's bizarre. It's bizarre, folks. The sequel, The Hunger Games Catching Fire, had the biggest opening weekend. Yeah. Well, is this Alfre Woodard? Who is this? Or is this I forget which actress this is, but she is the most interesting part of that trailer. I'll give him that. She's the most interesting part. She's got a freaky, scary looking eye. She looks like she looks like that Trump prosecutor, actually. Well, we're not going to go there. All right. Production budgets for the previous 4 films have ranged between 80 million for the first film to 160 million. Okay. Yes. I'm trying to find the lead here, folks. If you take the trends from both Mockingjay films, which saw just shy of a 30% increase in the international box office compared to the domestic, The Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, will only bring in about 207 million globally. What is its budget? That's what I'm curious about. That would... So basically what they're saying is, looking at the high-end prediction of 142 million, the film could gross 326 globally, which would make it a profitable film if it only has an $80 million budget. Well, good luck to him. Godspeed. I won't be there. Well, yes, I probably will, because I have this channel. So yes, I probably will see it. But otherwise, I wouldn't be there. I really wouldn't. I could care less. I don't want to see a prequel. So yeah, there you go. The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games. I can only... That must have been Rachel Zegler or Eric Marr that you were reacting. Ew, he says. Ew. Oh my God, no. Or no, was it... oh no, it was the chick. What? The Hunger Games. What? Looking for the IMDb on this thing, because I am drawing a blank. Suzanne Collins is the author of the books. Okay, yeah, all right. Viola Davis. There it was. It was right. Viola Davis. That could be what you're reacting to. I like guessing. So, okay. Now, let's take a look at a different... I think it's time to take stock, is what I'm trying to say. I think it is time to take stock of where we are in the Star Wars, Disney Star Wars catastrophe. And so your captain has taken the liberty for you, my dear audience, because even though none of you were asking for it, I felt this is what we needed. I went through all of the Disney live action stories, Star Wars stories. And I decided, I'm going to do this with Marvel too, because I feel like it's time to just diagnose all these assholes. And Bellamy Boy is in the chat. Welcome aboard, Bellyman Boy. I'm sorry about that. Bellyman Boy says IMDb Susan Collins. Suzanne Collins? Well, let me know what you're looking for. I know that she wrote the books now. So let me know what you're looking for. We'll talk about it. So here is the captain's list. I have taken all of the Disney Star Wars films and TV shows, and I have ranked them from the most palatable to the most horrific. And so this is the captain's ranking of Disney Star Wars films from best, or more accurately, most acceptable, to absolute horror show. And I believe we will start with what I consider... Now there's a couple of things you need to understand. There's the rating the captain would have given it the day it came out. And then there's the rating the captain will give it today due to, I believe I would coin the term Disneyflation. Let's call it Disneyflation. That is, you have to adjust your rating for Disneyflation, which is, I did not know where this was going, okay, when I saw some of these films. So like The Force Awakens, perfect example. It's a giant mystery box. Anything could happen, or nothing could happen, or the worst thing possible could happen. Luke Skywalker could disappear like a fart. That could happen. But we didn't know then what we know now. We didn't, And we don't have time travel like in Star Trek to go back and fix things. Yeah, I would violate the Temporal Prime Directive to solve this disaster. So, adjusting for Disneyflation, I believe the best film, the one film that still remains the only Disney project I consider pretty good, and that would be Rogue One. I love this film. No, stop, pause. No, I ruined it. I ruined it already. This is highly organized. Yes. There we go. Rogue One has a lot going for it. It's got Donnie Yen. The Force is with me. I'm with the Force. It's got a pretty cool storyline with one of my favorite actors of all time. He's such a great character actor. He's the one that plays Craddock. Why is his name escaping me at the moment? Anyway, it did some fun things. I like the fact that it was a film where there was actual stakes, there was sacrifice. I do think Jen Erso is a bit of an annoying character. She's a bit of a Mary Sue at times. But there's all, this is the most interesting Andor ever was. That's definitely for sure. But at the end, it ends with a worthy, noble sacrifice. And it tells a pretty good tale of what it was like to steal the plans for the Death Star. So I'm pretty much okay with it. But moving on. Second most acceptable thing that Disney Star Wars has ever produced, I would argue, is The Mandalorian Season 1. The concept made a lot of sense. You have a classic serial Western in space, a mysterious pale rider type character wandering from town to town, getting embroiled in local drama. His mission gets complicated when he discovers that his target is this child that he actually cares about. And we as the audience become a little bit more intrigued because we've never seen another. I mean, if you leave aside female Yoda from the Jedi Council, we'll just put that to one side. We've basically never seen another example of Yoda's species. That's pretty interesting. That actually there was a lot of opportunity there. If they had just kept it gritty, just keep it like he gets bounties. He goes after the bounties. We get to see him do gritty, kind of dark things. There's no lightsabers right off the bat. There's no Jedi. This is right after the fall of the Empire. So it's kind of interesting to see this character and explore the actual culture of the Mandalorians. That was another intriguing aspect of this. And so the first season, pretty good, definitely some filler, but for the most part, there's a through line. He's protecting this child. It comes to a head at the end. He has to fight the Empire. And it seemed reasonably promising. Which brings me to number 3. And this is where I think we start to sink into the captain disapproves. Andor, I would argue, is possibly the best written thing that Disney Star Wars has ever produced. It has competent execution of dialogue, character development. The Imperial Security Bureau, the ISB, which is the sort of, which is pretty much like, it works pretty much the same way as the CIA, the FBI. It's basically the same deal. So this is the Imperial surveillance state at work. And you've got all this scheming going on within it. You've got characters there is this dog-eat-dog knife fight for political power inside the Empire. So you got that going on. It's pretty interesting. They actually have real limitations, the characters in this show. They can't just go find a space whale and fucking fly to another galaxy whenever they want, okay? They actually have to strategize. They have to come up with stratagems to trap the rebels. The rebels have to come up with clever ways to sneak into places. There's heists. There's prison escapes. There's terrifying and horrific human sacrifices to survive. There's a great character played by Stellan Skarsgård, who he's an antiquities dealer on Coruscant, and he moonlights as a rebel. And you see that he's a man who has carved out his own soul in order to get the rebellion going. So there is some actual ability here. The problem is it's about 8 episodes longer than it needs to be. There's about 6, I would say there's 5 episodes. There's 5 episodes in this show that are pretty damn good and worth watching. And if you just cut out all the other episodes, including all of Andor's backstory, because who the hell cares that he grew up in some jungle? I skipped the first two. Folks, I skipped the first 2 episodes of this show, and I didn't care. I didn't miss anything. I skipped right to episode 3, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then he spends like 2 episodes on a planet planning this heist. And most of the, I just praise the dialogue on the show, and a lot of it is good. But then there's also dialogue like, how do we know we can trust you? We can't trust you. And he's like, you can trust me. You can trust me. I am Andor. He's like, we don't know if we can trust you. I don't trust him. Do you trust him? I don't know. I don't think we should trust. 2 episodes of that, folks. I skipped those 2. I went right to the heist. The heist is pretty good. So there you go. But on the whole, I do not like this show. I think it was boring. It was long. It was oddly placed. It was oddly paced, and they made me work for it. They made me work for it, and I don't mean work for it in terms of they trusted the audience with nuance and complexity. What I mean is they wasted my time to stretch this thing out into 13 episodes. It actually could have been. It could have been the one Disney Star Wars project where 6 episodes, 6 to 8, would have been good. How many episodes was it? I think it was 12, if I recall. It was 12 or 13, maybe. It could have been 5. It would have been just fine. But now, unfortunately, we must sink even lower into the depths of Disney. Because then we have number 4 on our list, The Force Awakens. Now, The Force Awakens only survives this high on the list for one reason and one reason only, and that is the mystery box. Every character in this could have gone any direction that any writer wanted them to go. And from the footing of this very flawed opener, which was just basically a retread of episode 4, and in hindsight, one with a great deal of flaws, there was still potential with the character of Finn. There was still, you had plucky Poe Dameron. He was kind of interesting. He had some skill and some talent. He had some good wisecracks that could have worked. You had Rey. She meets Luke Skywalker. There's a potential story of Jedi and Padawan that could be interesting. You had Kylo Ren, who took the normal trope of a big bad stalking the halls and instead said, well, what if he's still on his journey to the dark side? He's not quite there yet. He's being tempted by the light. He's on a kind of villain's journey, if you will. There was potential there. But we all know what happened to that. Which brings me to number 5. Solo, a Star Wars story. One thing that was interesting about this film is I remember when it was being made, Kathleen Kennedy, everybody's favorite gal, she fired the original screenwriters. So the original screenwriters that were working on this thing, they had a lot of sarcasm in it. They had a lot of jokes. They had a lot of Han Solo humor. And she felt that was the wrong direction. And so she fired them because she felt I don't know the exact quote, but it was something like she felt that Han Solo was not a funny character. He was a sarcastic character, and that there was a difference, and that they were turning him into a kind of too funny oddball character. Now, at the time, I read that and I thought, oh, well, that sounds wise. That sounds like someone who understands the character and doesn't want him to become a big dumb joke. And that was kind of why at first I thought, well, that makes sense. But now that I look back on that and I see what the story became, which was this dour, monochromatic, kind of dull story, there were parts of it that were good. I didn't hate the actor. I thought but the origin story of, what was it? The parsecs. What was the line? It made the Kessel run in under 12 parsecs. Yeah, I always thought that could have been super interesting. I always thought that could have been a really interesting tale. And they could have built, honestly, the whole film around it. And instead, it was as nonsensical. It was even more nonsensical than the original line. It was stupid. So they ruined the Kessel Run. But Lando Calrissian, as played by Donald Glover, wasn't bad. So highs and lows. I did not hate this film. But I also understand why the fans hated it. And I am retroactively very proud that the fans boycotted it and hashtag Solo lost money. This was Disney's Waterloo. Waterloo comes later. This was like Napoleon's first defeat when he got exiled to Elba. For Disney, this was the first time. This was Does a God Bleed? That we made Disney bleed with this one, and they didn't know that was possible until that point. Number 6. And yes, I chose that image very deliberately. This would be The Mandalorian Season 2, which, there was one really good element. Can you guess what it is? I'll give you one hint. But, look, Mandalorian Season 2 was about half of the episodes were pretty interesting, such as the episode where they break into an Imperial facility, and the guy played by Bill Burr has that really interesting dialogue with an Imperial trooper, and they're discussing like the merits of the Empire and how they brought stability, but then they're talking about war crimes. And then you also had Gina Carano sniping them from the elevated position, which is pretty awesome. That was all fine. And then you had this ending, which I considered at the time a total Deus Ex Machina. Luke Skywalker swoops in, saves the day, and even though I quite enjoyed that scene, I remember coming away with it. I was still pretty blue-pilled at this point. I was still kind of thinking, well, this must be their way of saying that the Luke we saw in Last Jedi was a mistake, and we're righting the ship. We are bringing it back to the way Luke should have been. And that was kind of my thought on it. Well, we know how that went, don't we, folks? Star Fury says, let's call a spade a garden tool. Star Wars is dead. Why have I now got the dead parrot sketch now going through my head? There you go, as Wrangler. Badass babe. That's correct. That's correct. And off we go. Number 7, The Book of Boba Fett. Boring, absolutely dull. What a waste of a character. What the fuck was this show? I don't even know. It was like the Sarlacc pit. That's another one. That could have been super interesting. We're climbing out of the Sarlacc pit. How did he escape it? How did he escape being digested for 1,000? Oh, he climbed out. Okay, he climbed out. Oh my, that's so interesting. Oh, so yes, The Book of Boba Fett was, what I mean is the Book of Boba Fett and Luke Skywalker training Grogu. That's actually what I meant to say. The Book of Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett and Grogu and Luke Skywalker and the Mandalorian and the blacksmith and the training of the Darksaber. What the hell? I've never, have you ever seen this in your lives, folks? A TV show where the title character is not in the show for 2 full episodes, where they just go ahead and do a mini season 3 of The Mandalorian and they do a Luke Skywalker episode that has nothing to do with the main storyline, such to the extent there is one at all. It's ridiculous. And then, of course, Mandalorian season 3. Oh, look how badass they look, folks. Look at how exciting they look. Have you seen the Mythosaur? I will even say I got some enjoyment out of Mandalorian season 3. It was funny. It was good for a few laughs. But that brings us to number 9, Ahsoka. And as you can see, the numbers have now changed to the color of vomit. Because, by the way, I love this image. This is my favorite. She is honest to God. She reminds me of this Mad TV skit. Does anyone remember Stewart? This is an oldie, folks. In the 90s, Mad TV, it was like SNL, but it was a little edgier at times. And you had Stewart, who was a grown man playing the part of an 8-year-old child. And it was as cringe and horrific as you can imagine. And he would just always say to his mother, look what I could do. And then he would do some dumb, he wouldn't even do anything. He just would do this weird looking pirouette, and he would wait for everyone to be impressed with. That's what Ahsoka reminds me of. She likes swinging her lightsabers at about the speed that a glacier moves across the Alaskan, steppe. That about the speed that a glacier moves is about the speed that she swings her lightsaber. And it's like she's looking at the camera saying, look what I can do. Yes, I think we've talked enough about that. So we'll just move on. So what was the 10th worst thing that Disney Star Wars has done to us, folks? Well, the 10th worst thing is The Rise of Skywalker. There are about 100 things I could point out about how awful this film is, but I'm just going to give you one. A copy-pasted fleet of 10,000 Star Destroyers that just happen to be on reserve, on standby. No explanation of how he staffed them. No explanation of how he built them. How the hell did any of them get here? All of them with a freaking Death Star ray on them. That one thing is one of the most horrifically stupid things I've ever seen in all of writing. And that's just what the stupid key thing. Oh my God. Anyway, but yes, I digress. And also, it's boring. This film is boring as shit. Which brings me to the 11th worst thing Disney Star Wars has ever done to us, folks. And this is a crime. Steven Jackson in the chat. Hi, Captain Salute. Welcome aboard, sir. Welcome aboard. And I mean, what could you... Obi-Wan Kenobi literally running awkwardly from Darth Vader out of fright. I mean, oh my God. Just the asinine choreography of the show. Like, there's that famous... I should have found it for you. But that meme where this chick is escaping from an Imperial base and she just slaps the top, not even the face. She just slaps like the top of one of the stormtroopers' helmets and kind of manhandles it a little bit. And he's like, I guess I'll pass out now. You got me. Oh, this show is so bad. But that's not even the worst crime of it. Of course, we can talk about Reva and all that crap. But just the fact that they missed the boat completely. It's like, this image actually is a pretty good image of what it should have been about. It should have been about Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know what's actually a really good comparison to this? I think about Better Call Saul. Anyone who's seen Better Call Saul, the very first scene of Better Call Saul, it's in black and white. It's in the present day. It's after the events of Breaking Bad. Saul is living in exile now in Nebraska. He's got a new identity. He's the manager of a Cinnabon. He's lost everything. His life is miserable. It's lonely. He has nothing. All he does is get up, go to work, make Cinnabons, go home, drink himself silly, and watch old YouTube clips of how awesome he used to be when he was Saul Goodman and he was this awesome lawyer in Albuquerque, and he's lost everything. It's in black and white. His life is miserable. Now, I bring that up because it shows how small his world has gotten and how difficult it is for him to adjust to this new life. And what is he going to do? And I think that could have been a really interesting angle for Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like, yes, he has a mission, which is keeping him going. But at the same time, he's alone in this desert and he's got all this time to think. And then you just bring in, honestly, I'll tell you exactly what Obi-Wan should have been. It should have been a dude with a problem story. That's what it should have been. A dude with a problem. He's living in the desert. He's watching over Luke. All he wants is to be left to his thoughts. And then trouble comes a-knocking, but not Reva and the Inquisitors and all that gobbledygook. It's basically like there's trouble in Mos Eisley, and he just does one little thing. He just does one little thing to intervene, and it starts to unravel, and he gets pulled back in. And I even think the trailer had some of the elements of this, which was they kind of hinted that the weakness of the Jedi is they can't resist helping people. Well, I think that one line was a pretty good thematic element that they could have used. And the whole through line of it should have been him being torn apart from his pull to be a Jedi, his wrestling with his failure and his defeat, and the duty, the fear of failing in his duty to protect Luke. I think those three elements, you could have had a really interesting story. What did they do? Oh, Reva and that stupid plot and Darth Vader fighting him in the desert, and then Reva sparing Luke's life for no reason. Oh, it was awful. And now we come to the pièce de résistance. The worst thing in all of Disney Star Wars' various crimes is Star Wars The Last Jedi. And this was really the moment when it all unraveled. This was really the moment when Star Wars was irrevocably, permanently destroyed. Not just because of how awful this movie is by the impotent Rian Johnson, who is incapable of writing a satisfying hero story because of weird psychological Freudian issues he undoubtedly has as a filmmaker and creative. And I'm serious about that. I'm fucking serious about that, by the way. He's up there with Director X, in my opinion. And he should, in fact, Rian Johnson's reactions to things it's just like Director X trying to get on Az's channel. Oh, Robin Hood is good. Robin Hood is good. It's just getting review. But Rian Johnson's reactions to criticism is just like that, folks. Anyway, but that's not even the worst part. The worst part is, rather than hearing the feedback of the fans and hearing the feedback of the customers and listening and actually considering, what should we do? Should we delay the Rise of Skywalker? Should we pivot? Should we, they didn't give it any time, and they doubled down, and then they just said, all of you fans are too stupid to understand how good this movie is. And yes, it was the beginning of the end. Now, why did I take us down this rather grim walk down memory lane? Well, because, my dear sailors and star nuts, I discovered something interesting. I discovered a YouTube video by an account called Prism. The link is in the description, and I want to share it with you. And it's pretty simple. It's basically just, what if Star Wars The Force Awakens was good? What if it was good? What would that have been like? So while I'm pulling that up, I'm going to check the chat as well. And remember, we are live on Rumble and X, formerly Twitter. And Fu Man Blue says, Ray would slap his hand away and say, Mr. Wrangler saying, what if James Bond tried to help Ray? Enough said. All right, here we go. Here is, let me share screen. All right, okay, play. That would help. So yes, this is
35 years after the fall of the
YouTube
Empire, the galaxy has entered an age of unparalleled peace and prosperity. Leia Organa has worked tirelessly for years, brokering peace treaties and trade agreements for old systems to reform the Galactic Republic. A job she has been superb at for decades. But there is one last system that wants to re-establish trade: the Imperial Remnant. A campaign Leia is staunchly in opposition of, but economic and political forces are pressuring the Senate to yield. Even though they claim to be reformed, they have a dark past. Before the Emperor's death, he created a contingency trust to furnish his most loyal supporters and military leaders with significant financial resources, as well as a small cluster of some of the most resource-rich planets in the galaxy, so that his legacy could endure. Resources that would substantially aid in the New Republic's humanitarian efforts, as they attempt to root out the last remnants of crime and piracy syndicates in the galaxy, and rebuild worlds that were ravaged by the Empire. Han Solo is now a highly decorated veteran of the Galactic Republic. After the fall of the Empire, he worked to establish the Republic's new flight academy. He spent time with them.
Yeah, some of these AI art pieces, which are mostly pretty good, but some of them are definitely a bit wonky. But like right off the bat, isn't it amazing how there's a world established here? It's like, okay, this is where the New Republic is. This is what the Imperial Remnant is doing. This is what Han... By the way, that is a perfect setup for Han Solo. He's running the flight academy for the new... That's great. That's brilliant.
Them developing new combat protocols and innovative flight maneuvers that only an ace pilot such as himself knows how to pull off. He's been offered to teach full-time, but he's Han Solo.
Doesn't get me blocked.
He's no teacher. This is his last day at the flight academy. The school celebrates him, and he gives a brief but heartfelt farewell speech. Even though he is looking forward to quieter days, he misses the days when he was needed. His protege, Poe Dameron...
Now that is brilliant! That is so good! I can't even believe how good that is. It's like, yes, Poe Dameron is his ace pilot, like his best protege. That's excellent. That would have given such a great dynamic in the story. They had the same kind of energy, so they would have naturally played off each other well. Dude, what we were denied.
Supremely admires the general. They walk out together as one of the captains says, "Thanks, Han. You've left the galaxy in safe hands. The galaxy no longer needs Han Solo to save it." He smirks, but the statement is a bit painful. Poe asks him how his family is celebrating. Han tells him his son is graduating from the Jedi Academy today and they need to get there before the ceremony starts. "Oh, funny, I am headed to the outpost just beyond Yavin. I'll fly out with you. They wouldn't be asking you to keep an eye on an old man, would they?" "No, sir, just an old friend." Han smirks. "Good luck, kid. You're going to be great." "Thank you, sir." Leia is waiting for him at the Millennium Falcon, fully renovated and restored to its former glory. The pair, along with Chewbacca and C-3PO, make their way to see their son. Leia is annoyed that they're running late. Han assures her they can make up time in the Falcon. She's doubtful at best. Their flirtatious banter and witty bickering hasn't lost a step. They may fight like an old married couple, but there is still deep love there, even after all these years.
You know his name.
Ad. Boy, I'll tell you, YouTube is more aggressive than ever with the ads.
On Yavin 4, Luke has re-established the Jedi Order. There are now hundreds of Jedi that roam the stars, offering aid and counsel where needed. His prize pupil and nephew, Ben Solo, is undergoing the Jedi trials. Han and Leia arrive late. Demonstrations of Ben's full power is on display, and it is impressive. His competencies in combat, dexterity, acrobatics, and use of the Force are all being tested. He emerges, fatigued but victorious. The day he has waited for his entire life has finally come. He is finally knighted, a Jedi. Han and Leia look on proudly, as Luke regales Ben with praise. He is so proud of his nephew and the honorable man he has become. Han is a little jealous of the bond his son shares with Luke, but he dismisses it. To celebrate, the family, along with Chewbacca and other familiar faces, gather round the dinner table and share stories about where their lives have taken them. Leia tries to convince Luke to reopen the temple on Coruscant. Luke argues getting too involved with politics is what got the Jedi in trouble in the first place.
Now see, there are so many great elements in this already, but I'll tell you, I have my issues with some of the plot points. I do think there's one major flaw in this story, and that is the fact that there's so many Jedi running around the galaxy, and you'll see why in a minute. However, I think that would be fixable. But what's really interesting is it's how, as you're listening to this story, I feel lighter. I feel lighter because it feels like it fits with what I saw in the Return of the Jedi. And there's that tension between Han and Luke over Ben. How brilliant is that? Now, here's the number one thing that is so excellent about this. This is what it puts right, okay? And this is what Star Trek Picard got wrong as well with the character Picard, which is the legacy characters, they are the GOAT. They are the greatest of all time. They are the rock stars. They are the heroes. They are the big hitters. They, therefore, are up here, and the newbies are down here. The problem with The Force Awakens and the rest of that crap, and Ahsoka, let's just face it, the problem with all that shit is that Dave Filoni thinks that Ahsoka is up here, and Anakin is like, oh, look, it's Anakin. He Vader. So they've got it backwards. And that's the same thing that happened with Picard. You got Picard and all these assholes come into his world and start bitching him around. And it's like, no, that's not how you pass the torch in a story. The legacy characters are who we're here for. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't bring in the new characters and have them earn their way in. And that's exactly what he's doing with this story. Notice how we are viewing the story through the big three, but we're being brought into the story of the new characters as we go. And it fits with the story of the big hitters.
No, it's far safer and more productive to operate at a distance. You're moving back to Naboo anyways, aren't you? Han chimes in. We're never there, even with the Alderaan colony. Leia steps in. There is just too much to do at the capital. You'll have to slow down eventually. Speak for yourself, Leia retorts. Luke asks what's new in the Senate these days.
Oh, totally
the
agree,
mood
Tom.
shifts. Leia is unsure how to word it, but she tells him the Imperial remnant systems want to dissolve and rejoin the Republic. Luke is wary of this. He gets up to look out over the night sky. The ruins of the Death Star can be seen far off in the distance. His mind takes him to a place even further, beyond what the eye can see. That can't happen. I know, Leia admits. Naively, Ben advocates that there hasn't been a major conflict in decades. They've been making considerable efforts at reform. Isn't there a way we can live side by side? Luke and Leia say it's just too risky. You weren't there, son. You have no idea what it was like. The violence, the fear, the oppression. Leia tears up. Entire worlds were destroyed. Ben argues the Emperor is gone. There are no more battles to fight. The war is over, Master. The war against tyranny is never over, Ben.
All right, only Wrangler, retreats. Thanks for coming in. Good to see you. Catch it on the restream. I might have to pull this out of the restream, so hopefully you get to see it. But because of the music, he uses the original Star Wars music. So, all right, have a good one, Wrangler. Permission to disembark granted, sir. And there he goes. And let me know if you're enjoying this. If you don't want to play, the whole thing, we'll move on. I'll just play you a couple of the highlights. But if you're enjoying this, we'll keep going.
Into the shadows, only to come back.
And again, hat tip to Prism. That is the creator who created this. I've already liked and subscribed, and I encourage you to do the same. Definitely support their work. I think they have a Patreon, and they have some other cool things. But this was like therapy to me. Watching this was like therapy. You should read the comments too. The comments on this video are heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. They're just like, one of them was like, let me see if I could find one. There was one I found down here. Finn gets the story he deserves. Han gets the respect he deserves. Poe gets the mantle he deserves. Rey gets the mystery she deserves. Luke gets the power he deserves. Snoke gets the creepiness he deserves. The Republic gets the defeat they deserve. Anakin gets the protagonism he deserves. We get the Star Wars we deserve. That was a good one. I can't find it. Anyway, there was one. It was something to the effect of like, I can't describe what Disney took from me and how painful it was to like have to like lose this story. And this was like one of the first things that made me feel good in a long time, is what one of the commenters said. I was like, oh my God, it just tears your heart out.
Again, Ben laments that he thinks they're all a bit paranoid. Luke tells Ben sometimes the most peaceful times can be the most dangerous. Just at that moment, boom! What was that? An explosion at the front gates. The Jedi Temple is under attack. Jedi and guards leap into action. Luke and Ben power up their lightsabers and leap into action. We get a full display of Luke and Ben's powers, and it is awesome. Han grabs a pistol and hands one to Leia. Just like old times, eh? Han puts a distress call out to Poe. Poe signals the fleet, and they make their way to the temple. Poe informs Han and the team that there is a second detachment that is heading to the Death Star wreckage. Why would they be doing that? Unless the attack on the Jedi Temple was meant to be a diversion. Luke tells Ben to go check it out. Han offers to come. No, Dad, you're safer here. I can take care of myself, boy. But Han listens to his son. Ben and two younger Jedi go to investigate. Han and Leia stay behind with Luke defending the temple.
Now, this is probably where I would put in a slight tweak, because I think I love this as an inciting incident. I think it's pretty brilliant. However, one of the problems that this reimagining of the trilogy has is, what are the other Jedi doing throughout the tale? Most of it is pretty damn good, I'm telling you right now. But there's like, there's just that sort of dangling element of like, what are we doing with all the Jedi? And I think what I would say is, probably most of the Jedi were wiped out in this attack, is what I would. And I think that might be a bit harsh in the beginning, but I think you could make it work.
Amongst the attacking battalion is FN 2187, aka Finn and Phasma.
Now this
Luke sees Finn hesitate when he is ordered to kill a room of young Jedi. They're only kids, he says. Do it, she instructs. No. She shoots him and gets ready to do it herself. But Han and Luke step in and make quick work of Phasma. However, she is able to escape. Luke asks Finn why he did that. Finn stares at him, his eyes full of fear. This is no stormtrooper. This is just a scared boy. Luke questions what they are doing at the debris site. The stare on Finn's face tells Luke everything he needs to know. Ben is in trouble. Back on the Death Star wreckage, Ben and his Jedi compatriots encounter Rey, a dangerous Sith, and the Knights of Ren, an elite strike force. They're looking for something.
Dude, this I was shocked by, because I was like, I would never have thought they would go this angle with Rey, but stick with it, because it's pretty fantastic. Now, the best part of this is we get to see the Knights of Ren, and they have a purpose, and they have a point. There's a point to them.
Something specific in the throne room. It's a glowing disc made entirely out of kyber crystal. They are packing it up in their shuttle. Rey sees Ben out of the corner of her eye. Leave now, Jedi. This matter doesn't concern you, Rey barks. Ben and the Jedi stand their ground. They're ready for the fight. The battle ensues. The Knights of Ren fight the Jedi. Rey fights Ben. Ben is outmatched in almost every way, and while the fight is intense, it is brief. His arm is severed and he is in trouble. But before Rey can deal the final blow, Luke leaps into action and swiftly puts Rey and the Knights of Ren on their heels. Outmatched, Rey retreats, and Luke runs over to Ben and cradles him back to the temple. Poe is able to get a couple shots off at Rey's star speeder. It's damaged, and he puts a tracer on it. Han and Leia grieve for their injured son. While he heals, Han, Luke, and Leia try to unpack what just happened. They question Finn. He says he doesn't know much, that they were the decoy for what they needed from the Death Star. Han: bullshit. The Death Star was picked clean decades ago. There's nothing left. I don't know. That's just what I was told. They were just taking orders. Han points a pistol at Finn. You know, I've pretty much had enough from men who just follow orders. Enough. The boy is scared. So is mine. Luke turns to Finn calmly. Orders from who? Hux can't be behind this. Someone trained that girl. She fights unlike anybody I've ever encountered. Where are they going? Finn says to rejoin the Imperial fleet and head back to base on Ariadu. Han says, we gotta go after them? Luke calms Han down. He's my student. He's my son. These people who hurt him are going to hurt a lot more, Luke. We need to stop them. I agree, but we can't just go marching into who knows what. Wouldn't be the first time. That was a long time ago. Leia, notify the Republic. I'll notify the fleet. Rey kneels before a hologram of Snoke. Did you get it? I did, Supreme Leader. We are on our way now.
That is such a brilliant switch. It gets even better as the story goes on, but he does, I think he uses AI for his voice in here, and like most of the time his narration is really good, but every now and then there's like a line that's like really awkward. I'm like, he must have used AI, but I think for the most part, the story, the dialogue, it's pretty good.
Perfect. I will meet you at the base, back at the temple. Leia speaks with the Supreme Chancellor and General Hux, the leader of the Imperial Remnant. Hux explains they're in final talks to rejoin the Republic. They wouldn't jeopardize the negotiations process with a skirmish to a 30-year-old graveyard. Leia presents holographic evidence. Surely this was a misunderstanding. Despite our instructions from High Command, there are still rogue factions that operate independently. Surely you can understand. Please, we invite you to survey our facility. We will perform an audit of our soldiers, and if any of them acted violently towards the Republic or the Jedi, we will deliver them over to your custody. Perhaps a peaceful envoy is in order. After Hux hangs up, Leia expresses her reservations. The Chancellor hears her, but warns that an open conflict with the Remnant could lead to war. She is ordered to go as a peace-seeking mission only. Han chirps, "Oh, come on, this is a trap." Han wants to go in guns blazing, which may be the right thing to do, but they can't start a war. We don't even know what they were after. When has the Empire ever gone after something for the common good? Disturbed by his options, Luke now goes to meditate. He calls upon the Jedi ancestors to find his next move. If we go in peace, it's almost certainly a trap. If we attack unprovoked, we could inadvertently open another conflict. Help me. Luke.
You know, J.J. Abrams was right about one thing. If Luke is in the story, it becomes about Luke. And the arrogance and the hubris of J.J. Abrams is that he failed to recognize that, yes, because that's for good reason. That's for good reason. Now, what I love about this rewrite is he did the whole trilogy. He did the whole trilogy, and it is a passing of the torch, but he does it the right way, which is carefully building up the stakes. And this is one of my favorite things about this. I love how this mysterious ring that they are looting from the wreckage of the Death Star. I like the scale of those stakes, right? Because it's this one. Now that's a MacGuffin done properly. That's a MacGuffin that there's some mystery to it. It's not like, oh look, it's a 1,000 times larger Death Star, and this one can kill a whole star. It's like, no, just start with something like some political intrigue, a battle, an attack on the temple, and they're after something. What are they after? Why are they after it? It's great. And Tom says, one of my complaints in this version is the motivation for Ben. Spoiler, but Ben turning to the dark side. They reuse the trite desire to bring someone back from the dead. I mostly liked that. My problem, I don't want to get into it because there's kind of some spoilers there, but I will just say that I think there were too many motivations, and that's really my issue. I think that motivation was pretty good. I think there was another motivation. I kind of like the idea that the dark side is just sort of seductive, and it pulls you in. It's like Reaper indoctrination, to use a Mass Effect reference. Tom says, is there nothing more to the dark side than the desire for immortality for oneself or loved ones? Well, what else is there in life, Tom? I don't know. What else do you want? That's enough. Look, the way I actually liked that element, because they kind of get into the motivations of what the Imperials are after, and I liked it. I thought it was pretty good because it was a very specific reason, and it fit with the prequels, and it fit with the original trilogy. I mean, look, here's the deal. And Lucas George Lucas himself kind of pointed this out. This is in the truest sense of a space opera, this is a soap opera. This is a story about the Skywalker family. And when it's done that way, it's actually a pretty powerful and compelling story. So to your point about is it a little bit played out, this idea of the dark side? Maybe. And that was honestly one of the main critiques of The Force Awakens as well. It's like, everyone's like, oh, geez, it's the light side versus the dark side again. And my one apologia for that was to say that, well, I think if you look at it as a cycle of life and you contextualize new stories with new characters and their relationships, I think that works pretty well. It's the unending battle of good versus evil. And I think that reflects real life. It's like, freedom and tyranny come in waves. And I think we are even living through that to some extent. There was a time when all the causes that the Wokies were arguing for had a certain level of justice behind them. And now look at them. They've turned into tyrants. They've turned into absolute hellish little tyrants that are trying to run everybody's lives, everybody's thoughts for that matter. So in my view, light versus dark is a very real struggle. So we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I take your point, sir. I take your point. Foodman Blue says, I can't come up with a good reason in one story, but damn, that is tired. I think if you build the story around the characters and their relationships, I think it works. I think if you're focused on what I termed in the last live stream as the obsession with gigantism, which is what these modern filmmakers have, especially in Disney, but also in DC, Marvel, Lucasfilm now, they have an obsession with gigantism. Bigger battles, bigger CGI, more volume, more characters, more this, more nanites. Everybody gets nanites now. It's gigantism. And so when Star Wars is obsessed with all of that, I think that, yes, it's boring and played out. But when it's about, an individual character wrestling with the good and darkness in them, I think that's pretty good. And I like where he goes with Rey and Ben in this story. I think it's actually a pretty brilliant way to play both characters. Foodman Blue says, major character swings like going from light to dark either happen abruptly or over a long period. Well, the Emperor fully, gleefully, and smugly expected that Luke Skywalker was going to just absolutely bend the knee to the dark side in one sitting. So how did he ever have that confidence? At least up until the prequels came out, my assumption was that the dark side is damn seductive. It can literally win you over in a day. So I don't know. If you're going with what we had to work with, I don't think a well-taught Jedi would fail to see the twisting of nature involved with resurrection. Perhaps.
Luke quiets his mind until a familiar voice emerges. It's been a long time, son. Father. Luke turns to see Anakin's Force ghost, calm, quiet, at peace. What should I do? What does your heart tell you? The two go back and forth about Anakin's time during the dark years and what the Imperial remnant could be up to. Anakin doesn't want to talk about it. Finally, Luke asks, what would they have been after? I don't know, son. The only thing I know is the whole time I knew the Emperor, he was only after one goal: immortality. It was his obsession. He was willing to violate every law of nature to achieve it. And did he? The Emperor is dead, son. But still, tread carefully. Imperial forces can never be trusted. And the girl? I cannot see her. Her presence is cloaked by the dark side of the Force. But
I don't know, Tom. I think that's pretty interesting. Because the prequels established that he was after immortality. And if we're going to use the Emperor coming back, at least this builds the whole story around it. Like, that's what I think is pretty smart about this, is if we're going to bring the Emperor back, number one, Luke is at the center of the story from the very first moments of the film. That's super important. This is really a continuation of the Skywalker story. And the incorporation here of Anakin as a Force ghost, it might be at just a skosh too much, but I do like the basic idea that, like, Anakin and Luke have been in communication, because this is really their final battle with the ultimate enemy. And I think that makes a lot of sense if you slowly but surely build it up. I do think that, like, different Sith have different motivations. Like, I don't know that every Sith is after immortality. Like, Anakin was not after specifically living forever. What Anakin wanted was he wanted to be able to protect the people he loved from dying. So there is wiggle room there. Tom says, I'm okay with light versus dark. I just want dark to be more complex than the denial of mortality. I see that as Anakin and specifically Palpatine's motivation. Like, that was specifically their motivation, was immortality. But a lot of Sith are after power, domination, chaos. Some of them are just agents of chaos. That's kind of the way I see it. That's what I got from this anyway.
Be wary. I fear this could be your greatest test yet. Luke opts for a peaceful mission with a caveat. Leia will go with her envoy, and he will go as an unmarked passenger. He will sneak into the base and see if he can get to the bottom of what's really going on. Han also wants to go, but he's retired and no longer has the government clearance. Leia tells him someone needs to be there for Ben when he wakes up. Luke places his hand on Ben's shoulder. It begins to heal, but not enough. Han remarks, "Haven't figured it out yet? It just takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. Neither..."
Bam, you could have done it that simply. He is the grand master of all the Jedi, and he's discovered a power to be able to heal people, but it takes a lot of energy, and it's dangerous, and it's taxing. And he hasn't totally figured it out yet. Like, this is why the Disney trilogy is so backwards, because Rey just has all this shit. She just has it. So, if you will permit me, I think I'll probably... Oh, do you guys want to continue with this? If you want to continue with this, I'll keep running it. But I'm tempted to kind of just skip to the ending here. But I think this is such a good setup for the story. It's what we were denied. Fu Man Blue says, yeah, continue. All right. We continue.
Neither of which we have a lot of. Han nods. We'll be here when you get back.
Oh, skip? Okay, cool.
Luke and Leia depart for...
This is what I think. So they find their way into the Imperial Remnant's base. They have this whole thing set up where the Imperial Remnant has their own planet. And one of the things I really like about it is that you have this political subterfuge that is establishing an important reason why Leia, Han, and Luke have to work in the shadows. So short of the long is that basically Rey winds up a captive of Luke, and Han Solo still dies in this version. But the difference is it becomes the focal point of the entire emotional stakes of the trilogy, particularly around Ben Solo, because it becomes essentially the reason that he starts to go down the dark path. And then they have a hook for the ending for the setup to the next film, which is right about, say, where is it? I want to say it's right about, I'm looking for the explosion. That's what I'm looking for. I just saw it. There it is. Ads. Got to get rid of those ads.
Is over. In that very moment, a beam of light shines down from the Imperial cruiser toward Coruscant, followed by a large military capsule. It drops right in the center of the Senate. Then boom! A massive blast followed by a mushroom cloud fills the sky. The destruction it creates is immense. The Senate is all but destroyed. Surely nobody could have survived that blast. Every government representative along with our heroes are gone.
Now, my one critique, so basically what happens is the Imperial remnant, they use the whole diplomatic envoy as a ploy, and then they use the attack, Luke's attack on their base. They use that, which there's a bunch of slaves, there's a bunch of slave labor, so there's a good reason for it. But they use that as a pretext to say, we've been attacked and this is us retaliating. And my one critique, because I love the aspect. I love the aspect that the Imperial remnant are trying to play nice. They're trying to pretend, they're trying to win the galaxy over. You know, they want better PR. However, I think that their case for how good they are is a little too good in this rewrite. And it becomes a little bit difficult to see how the public of the galaxy is going to be persuaded that they should not support the Empire. And really the problem with that is that I don't think he shows quite enough to the audience to show us how evil the Empire is. Because on paper, what they're planning to do, arguably, is not quite as evil as it needs to be. So that's one, and one part of that is that I think they have too good of a reason to blow up the Senate. I would make it that rather than they're wasting all this time with the pretext, they just do it. They just take an opportunity to decapitate the government. And by the way, that is the right scale of threat. That's the right scale of threat. They've decapitated the Senate government and they've got the New Republic on its back foot now. That's enough. You don't need to have a Star Killer base and all this other bullshit. Like, that is more than enough to establish the emotional stakes and kick off the next adventure. So I'll just go right to the end here. So here we go. This is the setup for the next one.
Republic comes to their aid. The victory is certain, but their losses are great. Ben is beside himself with grief as he carries his father's body across the battlefield. Thousands of soldiers pause and remove their caps in tribute to the fallen general. Chewbacca cries out. Leia and Chewie comfort one another as we fade to black. Days after the battle, Luke questions Rey in a holding cell. "What's coming?" he asks. "I already told you. You can't possibly imagine," she shouts. She repeats, shouts, and laughs, as if insane, until she finally starts to crack and weep. "He wouldn't leave me. He wouldn't leave me. He wouldn't leave me." Luke leaves her in solitude, disappointed.
Snoke.
Her weeping is heard throughout the halls. He boards a ship and joins his family on Naboo. Han's funeral is a spectacle. There are hundreds, if not thousands, there to pay their respects. Ben whispers to Luke during the procession. "What do you intend to do with the girl? Her story is yet to be written, Ben." Ben is angered by this, but he lets it go. Now is not the time. Back with Snoke, he levitates the mysterious object we now know to call the Eye of the Force into position. He is on board a monumental space station, not a Death Star. Something more sinister. The Star Forge. An engine of unfathomable evil. It is pulling energy from a nearby sun. Snoke speaks seemingly to no one. A voice is heard throughout the space station. It's sinister and cold. It is a voice that could only be recognized as the Emperor's. It speaks only one word. Finally, roll credits.
Hat tip to Prism. So please do like and subscribe. Great video. It's basically what if Star Wars The Force Awakens was awesome? And indeed, what if it were awesome? You know, I have, you know, what's incredible about that is it's a pretty damn good rewrite. It's a pretty damn good storyboard. It's a really great treatment of what the story could have been. It still needs some work. There's still a couple parts, like I think there's too many Jedi, and it's not that I'm against Luke having the Jedi Temple. It's just you got to figure out how to keep the stakes at the right pitch, knowing that look, if Luke's got a whole army of Jedi just hanging back there, like the audience, that's going to kill the stakes immediately. So you can't have that. You've got to have a reason why they're taken out of play. That's all. So that's one issue with it. I do think he retreads a couple too many of, like the funeral on Naboo is pretty awesome, and I can't exactly fault it, but I definitely wouldn't have the Jedi Temple on Yavin. I'd put it on a new planet we haven't seen before, because I do think George Lucas was right that we should see something new in every Star Wars story. Yes, we can occasionally see some old things, but we want to see new planets because we should always feel like this galaxy is vast. We should always feel like this galaxy is huge and unexplored. And this is the mistake that The Mandalorian and Ahsoka and these other this is the mistake they've made, is that they have turned Star Wars into, you know, it's like Coruscant is now the DMV. You know, every planet is Tatooine now. It's just, even when it's not Tatooine, it's so boring and it makes everything feel so small. And like even the Mandalorian moon that you've got Bo-Katan living on, she's in this empty castle. There's nobody there. It's just, you know, so that's what I'm talking about. Even when things are big in this universe, they feel small. They feel claustrophobic in the new Disney version. So I do think you have to show some new places. But imagine just leading with, this is what they're up to. The Emperor is coming back. Can you imagine what that would have been like? Can you imagine all the fan theories after that ending, how people would have felt? And that would have been a suitably awesome threat. There's no Death Star. We don't need a Death Star. We don't need another planet killer. We just set up the stakes just enough that we know something really bad is about to happen. And that kicks us off to the races. And I got to say, the next installment of this, he basically did, what if The Last Jedi was awesome? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It basically has to do with Ben's fall to the dark side and Rey's journey back to the light. But what's so brilliant about this is it's not that simple, because in the third installment, he introduces a couple of twists and there's one, I have my issues with certain elements of it. I feel like sometimes the battles, the stakes are a little too complicated. You have too many competing motivations in the same situation, but those are rough edges you can smooth out in rewrite. So that's not a problem. I consider these to be brilliant treatments and a pretty amazing rewrite using almost all the elements that were there. The amazing thing about this is he uses basically all the elements that J.J. Abrams' project and Rian Johnson's project put on the table. Even the fact of Snoke dying, he incorporates that in a really brilliant way. He incorporates the element of the Emperor coming back. He incorporates the elements of, well, I don't want to spoil anything. Check out the rest of them. They're really good. But I will say this. I think Finn's story, there's probably one or two things I would change. But for the most part, it's an infinitely better story for Finn. And it's amazing how it doesn't break the story to just have it be that Finn is also a Jedi. Like, that's basically how it winds up. Finn winds up training to be a Jedi, but he's not that good at it. And so that becomes an element of his story arc. And there are some beautiful scenes that he puts forward of like Luke helping Finn with this, because Finn feels like a failure and Luke has to like give him, there's actual wisdom in this story. That's one thing I really love about what he did here. Luke is a wise teacher. And I even think I probably would have made a change to kind of where Luke winds up at the end of all this. But then again, the ending is so good that I got chills. I really did. I really did. I was about to become one of the Ahsoka show. Oh my god! Oh, it's so beautiful. Like the actual ending is like the final scene is pretty good of the trilogy, the reimagined trilogy. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that to remind you that there is good storytelling out there. It ain't that hard, folks. It ain't that hard. Disney just makes it hard. Wait, no, that's not what I meant to say. That's not what I meant to say at all. Lucas had a really good point about this too. I want to share this point with you. Let me pull up this video.
New. People have a tendency to overdo it. They abuse it.
Gigantic.
Now, there were two things that got abused with Star Wars and still being abused. One, when Star Wars came out, everybody said, oh, it's a silly movie. It's just a bunch of space battles and stuff. It's not real. There's nothing behind it. And I said, well, there is stuff behind it. It's not just a space battle. There's more to it than that. It's much, much more complicated than that. But nobody would listen. So they just said, oh, it's simple. And we like the spaceships. We like the stuff. So they said, fine. So the spaceships and that part of the science, fantasy, whatever, got terribly abused. And of course, everybody went out and made spaceship movies. And they were all horrible. And they all lost tons of money.
I really hope this man has not seen Ahsoka. I can't. No, please, George, don't look. Don't look at it, George. Don't look at it.
And you say, well, you know, there's more to it than that. You can't just go out and do spaceships. And the other part.
But have you heard of space whales? Oh, no. Oh, George, it's so much worse. It's so much worse. Have you heard of space witches and space whales that travel between galaxies?
Which is the technology, which is, oh, we'll just take this new technology. It's great. You know, especially when it came down later to digital technology where you can really do anything. And then people just abused it all over the place, which they did with color. They did with sound. Whenever there's a new tool, everybody goes crazy and they forget the fact that there's actually a story. And that's the point. You're telling a story using tools. You're not using tools to tell a story. You understand that?
I do.
You know what's incredible about that point? He's talking about almost every single thing Hollywood makes ever. He's talking, I mean, like in recent years, every new Netflix show, every new boondoggle that comes out on theater that just this crap that they serve up to us. This exact point applies to like 90% of it.
The point was the other thing that got abused naturally in a capitalist society, especially in an American point of view, which is the studios and everything said, well, wow, we can make a lot of money. This is a license to kill. And they did it. They just simply, and of course, the only way you could really do that is not take chances. Only do something that's proven. Let's not do anything. You got to remember, Star Wars came from nowhere. American Graffiti came from nowhere. There was nothing like it. Now, if you do anything that's not a sequel, or not a TV series,
or a prequel,
or it doesn't look like one, they won't do it. They say, we want something that we know.
So that's the downside of Star Wars.
That's the downside of Star Wars. And it really shows an enormous lack of imagination and fear of creativity on the part of an industry. I mean, corporations are not known for, you know, maybe not Silicon Valley, but the old institutions are not known for being they're known for being risk averse. And movies are not risk averse. Every single movie is a risk, a big risk. I like to say, you know, it's like the movie business is exactly like professional gambling, except you hire the gambler, usually some crazy kid with long hair who's like, I don't get this guy at all. You give him $100 million and you say, go to the tables.
Or in the case of modern Disney, like $300 million.
And come back with $500 million. That is a risk. Now, the studios have been going to think of it that way. They say, well, maybe if we told him that he couldn't bet on red, maybe if we told him, because we did market research and we realized that red wasn't, so they tried to minimize their risk. But once you, and of course, you're hiring the kid to take risks, to be creative, to do things that have never been done before, never been tested. You have no idea whether they're going to work or not. That's completely the antithesis of what a big modern corporation is. They want to test things 360 ways. You just go
So
out
Hollywood is not like a big American corporation because it'll just throw money away behind somebody and have him go or her go and figure out.
But they don't know. They don't know how to do that because they're basically corporate types. They think the worst thing that happens when they think they know how to do it. Then they start making decisions that ensure that it's not going to work.
But
hello, Kathleen Kennedy. Oh my God, yes, dude! Did he just nail every single point? I think about he talks about they're risk bean counters. They're bean counters, but what's incredible is they're not even good at that anymore. Because you would think that after 10 box office flops, 10 shows that nobody watched, you would think at some point Disney would be like, gee, I really hate losing money. This is the incredible thing. He talks about how it's like you give this kid with long hair, weird ideas, you give him $100 million, go gamble, bring me back $500 million. Well, that would be one thing. But they don't even go find a good gambler. They don't even go find someone that's won a few. They don't even go find a guy that has a reputation for writing great, successful films. They go get Jeff Loveness. They go get Jeff Loveness from Jimmy Kimmel Live. And they're like, here's $300 million. Now go gamble with it. What's wrong with these people? At least Dave Filoni, I can kind of understand because he's got a reputation. He worked with George Lucas. He did Clone Wars. He did Rebels. There is some credentials there on paper. But, the other problem with that, though, is there were no live action credentials. Even Dave Filoni had really no live action credentials to speak of, but they still give him all this power and all this control. Such a disaster. Poor George. Poor George. We must pour one out for George. Let us doff our caps. Moment of silence for George Lucas's Star Wars. Thank you. Thank you. Well, what else do we have? Should we watch some Loki Shills? We should probably do some Loki Shills. Because I'm not watching Loki. I don't care. I don't want to see it. This is the thing is, at least with, when I watched Mandalorian, okay, season 3, I was not super interested in it. I'm just queuing this up for us. I have not seen this. This will be a live reaction. But, it's like at least with Mandalorian season 3, I had seen the first season. I'd seen the second season. I kind of knew what I was in for. It was, like I said, hit or miss in the second season, some good stuff, some bad stuff. First season, solid concept. It could work. I figured, how bad could it be? And I didn't actually expect, I did not expect Mandalorian season 3 to be terrible. I expected it to be acceptable. I expected it to be, a passing grade. If not, maybe it surprises me and it turns out to be pretty good. I was shocked. I was shocked at how bad it was. I really was. I forget why I was bringing that up. But anyway, on with the Loki Shills. Okay, that was why I was bringing it up. Because enter Loki, right? And it's like, I have seen so many of these things now with Secret Invasion and, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka. It's like, I've seen so many of them. It's like, every single one of these things, it's the same shit. I'm not going to watch this anymore. Did I miss something in the chat? Oh, yeah, there you go. Tom says, just watched a great retrospective on the entire writing production process of The Rise of Skywalker plot script and how it got mangled. I can only, George Lucas says it's the corporate bean counters, basically trying to control the odds. I call it the algorithm wood chipper. They are looking, you cannot make good stuff by data. And this is a delicate balance, and I don't think it's ever going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. That negotiation between creatives and artists who want total freedom, they want to have the ability to explode concepts, and I mean the good ones anyway, or at least the interesting ones. They want to have the opportunity to try things. And that's risky. That's dangerous. And sometimes they go off the rails, and you get like Taika Waititi is a great example of a total creative who just wants to run wild and just do whatever he enjoys. And when he runs too wild, you get nonsense like Thor, Love and Thunder. So that's one side of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum is basically what I think Disney is, which is a bunch of accountants, a weatherman running it who thinks he's got an idea of how good content is made, and everything is being run through test audiences. Everything is being written by committee. Everything is being done according to what the latest algorithmic projections are. And that's horrible. It's miserable. It's Ready Player One. It's living in the Matrix. It's not living. That's not living. Art is about living life. It's about life. That's what art is. And so, no, you can't do that 100% from an accountant perspective, but you must have some balance. You must have some balance. And I think the answer today is independent media. And we're living it, folks. We have to make our own things. And we on the Swords and Starships channel are working on just that. So, in lieu of your dear captain gluing his eyes open to suffer and watch Loki for you, which I would do. If you asked me, I would do it. Rather than that, let's take a look at the Loki Shills. So if you don't know, Grizzy, specifically at Grizzy1989, hat tip link is in the description. Check out his channel. Give him a like. Give him a follow. He is performing a service to humanity, which is he goes and finds all these people that cry crocodile tears for whatever Dave Filoni shits out or whatever Marvel shits out. He clips them all together so we can make fun of them and mock them together. And so we shall now engage in the sacrament, the sacred rite of mocking Disney, Marvel, Loki shills.
For episode 2
my
and
God.
the direction.
Oh, already. Look at the shirts. The shirts say Marvel couple. Oh my God. No. I'm 5 seconds in. I'm 5 seconds in and I'm already horrified. They haven't even said anything and my stomach is turning in knots. All right, here we go.
That this series is going.
I wouldn't wear that.
Welcome to the food episode. Did they make you hungry?
Bitch, shut up.
Oh my God, it's Brad Wolf. Can I get your autograph?
Oh!
Oh! Loki'd him.
Hashtag he Loki'd.
Go, Loki, go.
Oh, no.
Go, Loki, go.
No.
I am so in love with this man. You have no idea. Oh.
Freaks me the f out.
She just says that about Anakin. She said basically if she sees a dude on screen, that's what she says.
Oh, dang!
Oh,
shit! Whoa!
Oh, I would not mind this many Tom Hiddlestons coming up to me in an alleyway.
Jesus Christ.
To be fair, it is Tom Hiddleston.
What's the craziest thing you've done in bed?
She'd
probably be having sex with old gangbang here without a rubber.
Jesus. Nut gobbler.
Yes! Oh my God, that visual!
Oh, dude, the shadows are so good!
Cool.
That was so great!
Oh!
Do you think this woman screams like this like when she's taking a very painful dump?
Oh!
Oh.
Love it. Love it.
Do you suck dicks?
Love it.
I'm going to tell you right now, I think this last guy is the most irritating one to me. This is the one that bugs me the most, is this guy. You know why? Because I think he is a stone cold liar. He was the one that actually accidentally had the real reaction to Ezra refusing the lightsaber. He's like, oh wait, no. It's like, oh no, it's like you know.
Love it.
Do you suck dicks?
Love it.
That's a great opening.
Do you think this is a higher priority than preventing a temporal meltdown?
That's not funny.
So I can do terrible, awful things.
He cured my asexuality.
I'm gonna puke, bro. I can't do it on stream. I'm gonna puke for that. I'm gonna puke for that.
Nowhere. How can that chick be that thirsty all the time? Oh my god, it's Anakin! Oh my god, it's Anakin! And then but she's an asexual? What? This is. Oh my god, I don't understand the world anymore. I don't. This is now. I finally understand why old people are so miserable. I get it now. Granddad, rest in peace.
Mobius! Get woke, Mobius!
Why are you gay?
What? What did
Mobius?
he say?
Nowhere, man. You're a
Mobius! Get woke, Mobius!
Why are you gay?
From the bottom of my heart, what in the fuck? What are you talking about? Oh, this is every Marvel show. This is every Disney show. Oh, it's so bad.
It's really good.
Yeah, and checking now the Kane's out of the other bad Kane's out of there.
That is literally the only genuine reaction I've seen out of these people.
Let me try this.
Oh!
Oh shit, dude! Oh shit, dude! Oh!
She is bored, you can tell.
Hey, nice to meet you. We're all gonna die.
We're all gonna die!
So why are you gay?
What's going on?
Dude, it's not a big deal. You like to fuck guys. I'm cool. I got friends that fuck guys. In jail.
They say opposites attract.
No.
Oh shit! No!
Don't overthink it.
What's she about to do?
Okay!
Oh, that's dope.
I will take you outside and fuck you in the street.
Those are people.
Are they gonna be okay?
Do you honestly care?
No, I actually don't.
The last episode does not perform well. So we're gonna need you to smash.
Not even at 10K views.
Yeah.
Aw, they're not getting views. Isn't that sad?
Apparently, I don't know what's going on with the views. I talked to a lot of other reactors, and it's the same.
Just a shot in the dark here, but maybe your content sucks. Maybe the MCU sucks.
Yes!
And maybe people are realizing that the corporation you shill for only cares about one thing.
Give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.
Grizzy, that was perfection, sir. Perfection. I got that. Bears playing again. He absolutely nailed them. One more time.
So we're gonna need you to smash.
Not even at 10K views.
Yeah.
Aw, they're not getting views. Isn't that sad?
Apparently, I don't know what's going on with the views. I talked to a lot of other reactors, and it's the same.
Just a shot in the dark here, but maybe your content sucks. Maybe the MCU sucks. And maybe people are realizing that the corporation you shill for only cares about one thing.
Give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video,
Absolutely just devastating. Just devastating. He nuked them from orbit. Oh my god. Oh, that was Beautiful, Grizzy. Do please like and subscribe to Grizzy 1989. I linked him in the description. You can see the full video. And oh, look what the cat dragged in. If it isn't Wrangler, come back. Loki is an awesome character. Too bad Marvel forgot how to handle him, but I didn't. Very good, sir. Starfury says they are all full of shit. Yes. Dude, especially that one little twerp. It's like, look, nothing against the guy personally. I just mean it just professionally. I'm commenting on his work, not him personally. But he's got that reaction where he's, oh, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. I love this. I love this. What do you love about it? Why is that so perfect? They never talk about the story. Oh, look. Oh, I love that visual. I love that visual. That the horns come in. You know why you like it, if you do, if that's a genuine reaction. The reason you like the shadow of Loki's horns coming in, because that is a glimpse of what the character is supposed to be. He's none of that in this show. Of course, I've listened to people talking who actually are enduring watching. I'll watch it. It's an artistic integrity thing. I need to watch it because I can't comment on something I've not watched, but I'm going to anyway because I've watched people talk about the show ad nauseum, so I know what it's about. And I know that there is the scene in which Loki is supposed. I've listened to Mahler. Mahler is the surgeon, and Mahler just, he takes the absolute scalpel, and you could just tell he doesn't even really even have time for this show. He's like, who cares? But he's talking about the scene where Loki goes in to interrogate a guy. He's like, now, wouldn't it have been interesting if Loki had just been the villain that he was when he was attacking New York and he had just tortured the guy? That would have been, now I'm not saying it has to be like Saw or anything, but it shouldn't have been this kind of kid gloves thing he does in the show. And it's all because of what George Lucas said. They are corporate types that are afraid of risk, and they don't want to do a show that has anything in it that might upset the algorithm. And that also could be the reason, cough button. And that also could be the reason why these channels are not doing well. Listen, with all due respect to the shills, the poor shills, consider reacting to something that people are interested in. Like, that would be an idea, wouldn't it? I'm not shitting you. A little inside baseball. I'm learning this YouTube game as I go, getting a little better at it every day. And one of the things I do is I research. I'm thinking about doing a video about something, or I'm thinking about putting something in the stack of stuff. And I only have so much time in the day. The captain is a busy man, and a lot comes across the captain's desk, and there's some of it can stay and some of it has to go. So how is a captain to decide what to lead with and what to dump? Well, I go researching what's trending, what's in there, what are people interested in. And I swear to God, like the search volume on Ahsoka is gone, folks. It is gone. Do you know that when I put in One Piece, okay, in Google Trends, it's all right. But when I put in Luffy, the character from One Piece, it is like up there with Star Wars in terms of search interest, even after the show has been over. Well, I mean, it was Netflix. It's the binge model, So it's like, it shouldn't be over because it should still be running if it were on a weekly basis, but it's basically over. People are still talking about Luffy all the time. Nobody's talking about Ahsoka. Nobody cares. So really, that's part of the reason. That's part of the reason why their channels aren't doing well. Nobody cares about this shit. And the problem is they go reading all these dumb media articles. They're like, well, I have fan theories. Do you remember that article I read to you couple of months ago now? It was that article by, back when Mandalorian season 3 was going, and they're like, Rook cast. What if Rook cast came back and turned out to be the rival to Bo-Katan? And I'm like, who? Like, who the hell is that? And then yes, Rook cast from this one episode of the Clone Wars, who was a traitor on Mandalore. And I'm like, dude, said nobody ever cared. Like, nobody in the world cares who Rook cast is. Nobody knows who that character is. That is a forgotten character from a forgotten episode of a somewhat now forgotten show. Well, Clone Wars not really forgotten show, but it is a forgotten episode from that nobody even cares about. And I'm thinking, these shills go and read an article like that, and they think, oh, well, gee, there's just all this buzz about who is Rook Cast. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Cartman when he's the coon, and he's like, and he tries to like write on graffiti on all the walls across South Park. He tries to write, who is the coon? With a big question mark, and he's got it plastered all over the school. He puts up flyers because he wants all this buzz about his superhero, the coon. But nobody cares. Nobody cares who the coon. He goes up to kids because now he's Cartman, right? So he's the Bruce Wayne of his character. So he's playing it super cool. And he's just like, hey guys, yeah, have you heard about that coon character? Like, who is he? What's he about? And everyone's like, who? And then they're like, but this Mysterion guy. Mysterion is super interesting. So Cartman hates Mysterion because everyone wants to know who Mysterion is. Nobody even knows who the coon is. That's what this reminds me of. It's like they go and write all these fan theories about, all the Filoni characters that might come back as if anybody cares. It's like Cartman. So who is the coon? Who? Nobody cares. So the problem with the shills is they believe the fake, phony lies of the media. They believe all the garbage they read about how interested people are in this. And it's like, I'm going to tell you, it used to be that there was a level of hate watching with Disney Star Wars. There was a level of hate watching with these Marvel shows. That's gone, folks. Like, nobody even cares anymore. It's kind of amazing. So, hey, Gary Neurotic, he nailed it. Apathy has set in. Apathy has absolutely set in. Yeah, no plucking out of eyes allowed. Agreed, Star Fury. That's important. That's a good safety tip from Star Fury, who is the chief gunner on the ship. And the other, to your point, Wrangler, about Loki, Loki, I was hearing like the way Loki is in this show, which I saw the first season, and I've heard nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. It's the same shit, different season. Who cares? They don't seem to understand that it doesn't matter if it's 8 episodes. 8 episodes does not mean that you waste 7 hours of your viewers' time and then dangle a little bit of a hook at the end. That's not what you do with 8 episodes. If you have 8 episodes, you tell 8 stories. That's what these morons that write this garbage don't understand. I remember I was watching some behind the scenes stuff on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and they talked about how, like, how many total episodes of Star Trek: Next Generation were there? How many total episodes of Trek Next Gen? Let's see. It must be about 175, 178. I was close. I kind of guesstimated it there. 178 episodes. And you know what the writers, creators, actors, what they all say about it? It's like, it was like 178 mini movies. It was, and that's not hyperbole, because every episode of Star Trek, it was, Kate Mulgrew, who played Catherine Janeway on Voyager. She made this point often that when you're a Star Trek actor, or at least back in the day, like, you had no life. You had no life. It was like 14-hour days. It was long days. You spent all this time in makeup. You spent all this time in rehearsal. It was a job. Like, it was a job. Cough button. And why? And the story also was a complete self-contained story. Now, I'm all for serialized storytelling, but my point is that each individual episode, even if it was a long-form arc like the Dominion arc in Deep Space Nine, every episode is like a movie. And Disney seems to think that they have a license to waste people's time, to just waste people's time with nothing happening. And, I'm just tired of my time being wasted with these assholes. It gets offensive. It gets offensive after a certain point. I'm like, and these shills are like, well, our channel views are dropping. Of course they're dropping. What are you reacting to? Nothing. Nobody's. This is the thing. They should do reaction. This is why I say, like, back when shows like Breaking Bad were airing, you could have had really successful reaction channels because, oh my God. Look, I love thinking back to the way people were talking about those shows back in the day, like leading up to the ending of Breaking Bad, the way everyone had theories, like what's Walt going to do? Like, is he going to die in the end? Like all this great stuff. Obviously in the later seasons, it all went south, but like when Game of Thrones was super red hot right after the Red Wedding and all that stuff, and people were buzzing about it, talking about it, that's when you can do a reaction channel. That's when you can do a reaction channel. Anyway, so Mahler was pointing out that like this new Loki, this is why it's hard. You can't review these shows anymore, because this is the same thing I could say about Ahsoka, which is the same thing I could say about Secret Invasion, which is it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity. Imagine if Loki is just literally that Loki. He's that Loki from the Marvel Avengers. He does not give a shit about how his future self made nice with his brother and changed his mind about everything and gave him, like, I think it would have been great if Loki watches that video of his life. He sees his future self getting strangled by Thanos and he's thinking, oh, good thing I didn't make that mistake. He's like, well, I ain't making that mistake. That guy was a chump. That guy was an idiot. He should have been like Will Ferrell. What an idiot. Like, why did he do that? He really should look at that life and just be like, well, I'm glad you showed me that, because that is what I'm not going to do. I think the first season of Loki, he should have just been obsessed with getting back to Earth to finish the job. That's basically what I think. Starfish, the captain put me in charge of the guns. Well, sorry, friendly fire. Here I come. Fire as you bear. Fire as you pass out. So, yeah, I kind of had a list of things in the stack of stuff that the captain is not watching, which is, that's not my usual style. Chris Gore, who was the one that actually pointed out that Prism video, by the way, that that Star Wars What If Force Awakens was good. I don't know if that's the specific video he was talking about, but it's the one I found, and I loved it. So hat tip Chris Gore over there at Film Threat. He's wild about this new movie, Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm going to tell you something. I saw the trailer for Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Martin Scorsese epic, and I thought, I could not care less. I just could not care less about this movie. I am so tired. I'm so tired of the white guilt bullshit. I am so tired of the Native American sob story. It's like, look, yes, terrible what happened to the Native Americans. I'm tired of retreading all of these victim stories all the time. It's the only story Hollywood can ever tell. Shit, we watch a movie that takes place 300, 400 years in the future, and they're still lecturing us about slavery. It's unreal. Star Trek Picard season 2, they're in the 25th century. And what do? They go back in time to 2024 Los Angeles, and they start lecturing us about climate change and homelessness. And I'm like, no, what are you doing? You can never escape it with these people. You can never escape it. And so it's like Killers of the Flower. Oh, it's all these nuanced performances and all of these. You know what you could just tell when you watch this trailer, Killers of the Flower Moon? You can just tell that this is Oscar baiting. This is Oscar baiting, is what this is, because this is all these, Leonardo DiCaprio. They gave him this fat face. He's like super fat and weird and bloated looking. And he's just, look, I kind of like the character he's playing, but you can also tell that he's hamming it up for the camera. They're all hamming it up, and they're just acting so actory. That's the only way I can describe it. They're acting all actory in this film. And it bugs me. It just bugs me. It seems slow. See, this movie, I believe the runtime is 3.5 hours, or was it 3 hours and 45 minutes? Did Chris Gore say it was 3 hours and 45 minutes? By the way, if you're into the Killers of the Flower Moon, this is one man's opinion. Okay, this is just the captain. I haven't even actually gotten to whether I think it's a good movie or not, because I haven't seen it. I'm just talking about the trailer. That's the only thing I'm even talking about right now. The trailer for Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm like, what is this about? I feel like this movie is going to be withholding. That's what I feel. When I see it, I feel like this movie's going to be, it's It's going to be 3 hours of the movie not giving me what I'm looking for, which is like, just what is this about? That's it. You know, I could be wrong because it's just a trailer. And like, we watched the Napoleon trailer earlier in the stream, and I admit fully, I could be dead wrong about this. I could be dead wrong. Joaquin Phoenix might be a tour de force. This might be one of Ridley Scott's all-time period epics of all time. Like, it could be. But that trailer is garbage, is what I'm saying. So, Readout Production says, I will defend The Killers of the Flower Moon in that the true story is one of the more fascinating criminal tales in American history. But 3.5 hours, for fuck's sake. No, I know. Like 3 hours. Look, dude, Oppenheimer is 3 hours. It's asking a lot of its audience, and it mostly earns that runtime. I would say, I think you cut out, and look, I think there's people that would disagree with me on this. I would cut out the Robert Downey Jr. arc of that story. I could be wrong about this. I'm not Christopher Nolan. Nobody is. But I just think that was a less interesting story. The Robert Downey Jr. political McCarthyism storyline in Oppenheimer, it was just less interesting to me than Robert Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project, and the moral tug of war he had over that. And Einstein, like all that stuff was, I thought, super interesting. And that was about 2.5 hours, but still, it was still a pretty good 3 hour, 3.5 hours, folks. That is a lot to commit to, even for a movie that is, you know, in the hands of Martin Scorsese. Look, Gangs of New York. Gangs of New York is a brilliant film. It is 3 hours. It is some of the most, look, I've rarely seen a historical, I don't think I've ever seen that particular era, that particular point in space and time ever portrayed on film, and it was portrayed gloriously. I'm talking about Gangs of New York, the 5 Points neighborhood in the Gangs of New York during the Civil War era. It is an era, it is a window into America that you've almost never seen. It is one of the bloodiest, most savagely violent films you've ever seen, based also on real historical characters and real historical events. And the real historical events are probably even more toe-curling than that movie is, by Scorsese's own admission. So I'm not denying that Scorsese is anything less than a master talent. And this very well may be an epic and incredible film. And I could be dead wrong about this, Readout. I acknowledge that. Captain fully admits I could be dead wrong about this. I'm just worn out. But look, if anyone can convince me to see this, it's you and Chris Gore. Yet my beloved audience could convince me to change my mind and go see it. So maybe I'll go see it. I'm going to need good seats for this, though, because 3.5 hours, man. I can't go to cheap seats for this. So we got to get the Barca Lounger, and I want my chicken nuggets delivered to me, damn it, like a proper American. Americans do not, you know, it's like how the Iron Islands in Game of Thrones, their house motto is "We do not." So, well, the American motto is "We do not fetch our own chicken fingers." Okay, it's just part of our culture. It's an important part of our culture. Star Fury says more slaves in Africa now than the entire history of American slavery. And you know what they're doing? They're mining cobalt for all of our batteries. So they're doing the Lord's work. Nobody cares. Nobody fucking cares. There's no, you know, oh yes. Oh, it's Indigenous Peoples Day. But does anyone want to talk about the children that are strip mining for cobalt and dying, you know, of lung cancer when they're 20? Nobody wants to talk. Disney doesn't want to talk about that. No, they do want to lecture us about, you know, the 59 genders. They do want to do that. So Readout says the 3 hours of The Irishman was so long-winded, I don't think I can take 3.5 hours. And I watched Gettysburg 1993 on a regular. Well, that is a brilliant film, is Gettysburg 1993. That is one of the all-time great films. Yes, that film is savage. That film is unrelenting. Excellent movie. Well, listen, Chris Gore was starting to change my mind about it because I watched his review on Film Threat, and he was making a case And I was like, yeah, this is sounding better than I thought it would be. I might just be into this. And to your point, it's an interesting crime story. Okay, that's fair. It's an interesting crime story. I might be on board for that. But then our dear Alan Ng jumped in and he just tore it to shreds. Now, he didn't say it was a bad movie. He said it was pretty good, but he just had his issues with it. But he kind of talked me right back out of it because I'm like, oh no, if Alan, because you know what, the point that Alan made about the movie is what really was kind of the main turning point for me on this argument, which is he said, I kind of always know what's going to happen. I'm ahead of the story. And that's exactly the thing I hate in movies. And I'm not saying that you don't necessarily suspect what's going to happen. Obviously, that's a part of every film. You kind of suspect what's going to happen. And sometimes it's the way it unfolds that surprises you. And that's totally fine. But what he's talking about is where you're bored because the film is not as smart. Like it thinks it's smarter than it is. The film thinks it's like full of all this mystery and all this suspense. And it's like, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know exactly what's going to happen. And you're just waiting for it to happen. So that 3.5 hours of that, I don't know if I can take that. Someone in the chat too on that episode of Hollywood on the Rocks was saying, well, geez, Alan, it's a historical movie. So of course you're going to know things that are going to happen. I'm like, no, that's not a fair point because look, yeah, if I watch Titanic, I know that the ship is going to sink. Okay. If I'm watching Oppenheimer, I know that there's a nuclear bomb that's going to go off. I know that. That's not why it's interesting though. It's interesting because it's the story of how we got there. And there are twists and turns in that story that are kind of interesting. It's the story of how we got to the iceberg. That's what's interesting. Starfury says, I could be watching something good, Lord of the Rings. And as I have said on this channel, someone once asked me, what is for Captain Garrett of the Swords and Starships channel, what is the greatest film of all time, the GOAT? And I say Lord of the Rings, which is a bit of a cheat because that's 3 films. And the reason I say that is because really, they are a single, incredible, like once in a generation film, once in a century film is The Lord of the Rings. And I can't pick one. Okay. I love The Fellowship of the Ring. I love The Two Towers. I love The Return of the King. They're such incredible films. I felt more emotion in those films than any other film in my life ever. And they just one-upped each other. That was the amazing thing. Like, dude, Boromir's stand at Amon Hen, my God. It's one of my favorite moments in all of cinematic history. Because I had not read the books. I had read The Hobbit, but I had never read The Lord of the Rings. And I had a friend of mine who listened to the audiobooks with Ian Holm as the narrator. Like, he was into it. He was like, so I was Lord of the Rings nerd adjacent. And I kind of liked that because I was like, well, since I haven't read the books, I'm not going to read them because I want to be surprised. I want to see what happens. And, my opinion of The Lord of the Rings was that probably they're huge books. They're huge books. So I thought it was going to be a more old-fashioned kind of story. And I was just not prepared. And what do I even mean by that? I guess I just mean kind of like a War and Peace kind of, let's just face it. Modern films have a certain way that they tell stories. And I suspected that, J.R.R. Tolkien being much more interested in lore and history and world building, that his tale would not quite have some of the twists and turns that it had. And I was dead wrong about that. This is back in the day when it was first coming out. These were my thoughts, And when Boromir comes over that hill and starts fighting for those hobbits, it blew me away. I couldn't believe it. It was one of the best things I've ever seen ever. And Sean Bean and his performance of that, it was incredible. And it was the best. And then we get the Two Towers, and the first shot in that film going over the Misty Mountains, and you hear the sounds of Gandalf fighting the Balrog. I had chills in the theater. Something those dumb shills, they wouldn't even know what to do with something like that, an experience like that. They think Loki gives them chills. How about the first shot from the top at the Golden Hall in Rohan when Eowyn comes out and you just see that flag, and you had that magnificent score with the Hardanger fiddle by Howard Shore. It's just, there's nothing like that. The Battle of Helm's Deep, one of the best live action battles ever committed to film, ever. Certainly the best of the three films. But then you get Return of the King. You get that one of the most magnificent scenes in all of film history. I know. I just said one of the, but I'm telling you, that's what it's like with these films. You think you've seen the most magnificent thing ever. And then Sam and Frodo are just almost dead on the slopes of Mount Doom. I wasn't even planning to talk about that. Look at, you just bring it up once and the captain can't even help himself. They're on the slopes of Mount Doom. And Frodo, he's like, I can't carry it for you, Mr. Frodo, but I can carry you. Oh my God. You've never seen a grown man weep so much. So much. It was just, those films are great. So yes, how can I pick one? You can't make me pick one. They are together. Greatest film of all time, easily, by a mile. I don't think there's even anything I would be like, oh, it's kind of even with. No, it's not. It's like by a mile. And I don't think that'll probably change as long as I live. The way things are going, I doubt there's we're never going to see it. We've never seen its like before. We'll never see its like again. And, speaking of George Lucas's point about gambling, dude, Peter Jackson, he and his wife had to fight tooth and nail to get that movie made. They had to shop it to so many film studios. And there were none of the studios would give Jackson what he wanted. It was only New Line Cinema, which at that time was not as big of a studio. They were kind of one of the underdog studios. And so they were willing to gamble. They were willing to gamble with Peter Jackson. And that's how he got them made into a trilogy, because I think one of the previous studios he went to, one studio wanted to do it as one film. Can you imagine that? They wanted to do it one film only. And then another studio wanted him to oddly break it up into two films. It was like, no, I can't tell this story in two films. It was only New Line Cinema that was like, okay, we'll gamble with you. We'll gamble with you. But that's rare. A guy that's that committed to the source material, that had that kind of a work ethic. And as George Lucas points out, Star Wars came from nowhere. Well, The Lord of the Rings came from nowhere. It came from nowhere, folks. Nobody was talking about fantasy movies were nothing in the 90s. Nobody was into fantasy movies in the 90s and the early 2000s until, the 90s, basically. There were some fantasy films in the 80s, such as Labyrinth and, The Princess Bride and stuff like that. But it just there was nothing like an epic, sweeping fantasy epic. There just was nothing like that. And The Lord of the Rings was a total gamble in those days. And one I am so grateful we got. And then we have Readout Productions pointing out that 2/3 of Oppenheimer was great. I would say 3/4. I'm kind of at about 3/4 of it were great. And I consider it, I believe I gave it a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. And I have to withhold that final point, though, because I'm going to tell you right now, the problem with Nolan's greatest enemy is Nolan. Christopher Nolan is undoubtedly one of the greatest filmmakers of our time. He truly is. And he's a brilliant talent. He is the true definition of an auteur. And he also is a guy that he always reaches just a bit farther than I think he can grasp. And I don't know that I would say that's a failing, because honestly, how are you going to achieve such great heights if you don't reach for the impossible? But I think what happened was he reached for this really incredible story of Robert Oppenheimer and this profound moral study of because the story of Robert Oppenheimer is a microcosm for really the story of the human soul wrestling with these weapons that we've created. For all of Oppenheimer's credit of building the building of the bomb was inevitable, which is kind of the whole point of the story, is that the moment Oppenheimer finds out, the moment that those physicists read a newspaper article that this scientist has figured out how to split the atom, they're like, someone's going to build it into a bomb. That's going to happen. That is the next thing that's going to happen. It's just a question of who's going to do it first. So what I like about Oppenheimer's story is it's really the story of us as a species. It's really the story of what are we going to do with these weapons? And now we've got a whole bunch of new ones to add to it, like AI, for example. Oh, that'll be fun. Won't that be a fun one, folks? Once the robots are fully operational. But then Nolan takes this very self-indulgent departure into political melodrama. And frankly, as political thrillers go, which would be the black and white portion of the film, there were some parts of it that were good. Like when they're talking about the development of the super, aka the hydrogen bomb, aka what we now call thermonuclear weapons, which are so vastly more powerful than atomic weapons. Basically, an atomic bomb is the detonator cap for a thermonuclear bomb. So really what we dropped on Hiroshima is now just the detonator. It's not even the weapon. So that's how bad it is. But anyway, that part of it was good, but then he devolves into this kind of cloak and dagger story, and it just felt out of place. It just felt like, dude, this is not the kind of, this is like a mid-tier cloak and dagger political drama, a la The Post, a la, what was that Russell Crowe movie? Like where he's a tobacco company insider or something. I think that was the name of the movie, The Insider. It was something like that. Like that's the kind of movie that black and white portion was, and it just felt like it was in the wrong place. It's like, no, I'm interested in this thing about Oppenheimer and how he sees the molecular. Anyway, you get my point. Readout. So on that same subject, Readout says, I don't mind Strauss, that would be Robert Downey Jr.'s character in the film, being the framing story to recall Robert Oppenheimer, but doing it non-sequentially on top of Oppenheimer being interrogated non-sequentially, artsy but convoluted. Well, that's Nolan for you. Like that, dude, there's never going to be a Nolan film where he doesn't do that. Like, I think the only films where he didn't do much of that was The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. But even like The Dark Knight might be the only film he's ever made that wasn't like skipping through different time periods. Was there any of that in The Dark Knight? I don't think there was. I think The Dark Knight is probably the only Nolan film that just proceeds from beginning to end in a linear timeline. It's probably the only one. But he does have a lot of fun with the editing. And Dark Knight's a brilliant film. It's one of the greatest superhero film ever made, in my opinion. And an absolute second greatest Nolan film of all time, in my view, is The Dark Knight. But he does like to play around with the editing. Now, The Dark Knight Rises did not have too much editing in it, but he did do a couple of fun. He did play with the time a little bit, going into the Ra's al Ghul backstory and some of that. So he just loves that shit. He just loves it. And sometimes it's brilliant. And sometimes it's a disaster, such as in Tenet. Tenet was a disaster. That movie made no sense. The sound design was terrible. The concept was way over. It jumped about 50 sharks, that film. So you're kind of just stuck with that with Nolan. I guess my problem is that so much of the tale was about the political intrigue of Strauss versus Oppenheimer, and I just think it distracted. It really, and you're right, the fact that it was non-sequential, I mean, it was a little bit hard to follow. But for me, that wasn't too much of a drawback because I just was ignoring a lot of it. I was like, okay, yeah, but let's get back to him building the bomb. Like that was when I was into it. I was like, oh, I'm super into this. Whenever it was him building the bomb, having his arguments with Kitty, what the countdown, that countdown scene is killer. That countdown scene is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in a film since the last incredible thing I've seen. No, but seriously, that countdown scene was the most exciting part of the whole movie, I thought, because it just they're like setting it up and he's putting on the goggles and there's the timer and he's giving order. And I was marveling at it too. As like an aspiring creative myself, it's like I watched that and I'm like, damn, how did he make a countdown so freaking exciting in that movie? Because I'm not here for the countdown. I'm here to see the bomb go off. But somehow he made the countdown more exciting than the bomb going off, which is also kind of a disappointing factor for me. Am I crazy? But maybe I blinked and I missed it or something. But like, I'm telling you, like when the bomb goes off, I didn't see anything. I was like, where is it? I was like, where is it? All I saw was there's the flash and there's the people. You see the flash on people's faces. And then you kind of see, like, he did have the one shot with like the big ballooning fireball. But you don't, but there wasn't like a clear shot of the bomb detonating. And it was like, what? How could you mess up the one thing I came here to see? But everyone else seems to think it was the most incredible thing they've ever seen. So I don't know. Maybe I just missed it somehow. I'll have to watch it again. Lord of yes, well, that would be you're thinking of Rings of Power. You're thinking of Rings of Power readout. Oh, yes, Star Fury. Yes, you're singing my song. Can't wait for Christmas, a 12-hour sitting of Lord of the Rings trilogy. Dude, those were the 3 best Christmases of all time, were they not? Each, getting to look forward to a Lord of the Rings movie coming out on Christmas. I'm telling you, I get warm, fuzzy feelings every time I think about the ride to the theater, sitting in that theater, talking to my friends after seeing it. It was one of the best times in the theater ever. And I can count on one hand how many times I have seen a film that was just, like nothing I've ever seen before or since. And Lord of the Rings would be one of them. Lord of the Rings would definitely be one of them. The Dark Knight would be another one of them, actually. The Dark Knight was like that's one of the greatest times I've ever had in a theater ever. It was so good. And then The Dark Knight Rises happened. He Gandalfed, says Star Fury. Oh, no. Ahsoka you got that wrong, Star Fury. Ahsoka Gandalfed. Ahsoka Gandalfed. She Gandalfed. Hashtag evader. Oh, my God. It's so depressing that there are people in the world that are that pleased by, they're so pleased by so little. It's like Filoni has given you nothing. He's given you nothing, and you're lapping it up like it's, you're Oliver Twist. Please, may I have another? Fu Man Blue, the kids will now watch the trilogy and say, oh, Gandalf Ahsoka. Oh, no. Kids are not going to be watching the Lord of the Rings. What? Dude, you got to be pretty nerdy as a kid to watch Lord of the Rings. Let's just face it, all right? Like, to this day, Lord of the Rings is niche, man. It's still niche. Like, I don't think it has. I think that is definitely one of the reasons why, Rings of Power was such a catastrophe for Amazon. I mean, it's definitely the fact that this was the fan base not to fuck with. This was the fan base that wouldn't, Lord of the Rings, this is the only fan base that calls themselves scholars. They're not Tolkien fans. They're Tolkien scholars. Like it is a professional study. So yeah, that was never going to work out. But the other thing they got wrong is they looked at Lord of the Rings like it was, well, I think they looked at it like it was Game of Thrones. I think they looked at it like it was Star Wars. They looked at it like it had this broad appeal. And frankly, that's a misunderstanding of Game of Thrones as well. That's like Game of Thrones was, there was someone debating this, I think, on Friday Night Tights. Was it Ryan and Jeremy were arguing about this or something? Like Ryan was trying to say, I think, was trying to say that, or no, was it Jeremy? I don't know. One of them was trying to say that Game of Thrones was always huge. It was Jeremy, I'm pretty sure. I'll throw him under the bus. It was Jeremy trying to say that, Game of Thrones was big right from the beginning. It was not. It was not. Nobody, I remember my buddy asking me, he's like, hey, you want to watch this show? It's called Game of Thrones. I'm like, Game of Thrones? What's that? Is that about like the British monarchy? What the hell is that? I was like, that's exactly my reaction. And he was like, no, it's a fantasy show. It's fantasy. Okay. Well, let's check it out. I remember watching the first episode. I'm like, not bad. I like that Sean Bean's in it. He's cool. The ending with the first episode. Oh, that's pretty good. But I remember thinking, okay, what is that house? Like, what is this world? Why is there a Night's Watch? Like, there's a lot to figure out in that show. Right about episode 6 or 7, once all the shit's going down in King's Landing. And now I'm getting pretty into it, right? Then you get to the end of the season, and I'm like, they just chopped off the head of the main character. What the hell, bro? Sean Bean is now out of the what? Well, he's got to be alive. That can't make any sense. That can't be right. And then the next episode confirms it. that was like that was me catching up, and nobody was talking about it. Like nobody was really talking about this show except nerds. Nobody knew about Game of Thrones except like fantasy nerds. And then like season 2 or 3, I remember bringing in a normie. I had a normie buddy of mine watching it with me, and he was not going to keep watching it, but I was explaining all the lore to him. I would pause it and I'd be, okay, so this is House Lannister, and House Lannister is all about gold and the reason they hate the Starks. I would just go into it, right? And I beg, pause. Okay, so Daenerys Targaryen is the descendant of this royal family that was overthrown, and the reason they want to kill her is because if she ever comes back, she's the only one of the clan. And so I would just explain all this stuff to him, and then okay, and then he be, oh, boobies, that's cool. Let's watch more boobies. Actually, I have a story about that. This is a normie, okay? This is a normie friend of mine, and he asked me, okay, I'll watch this Game of Thrones show, but I want to know, are there boobs in it? I was like, oh yeah. Well, let me think. I think, and I thought, well, there are some boobs. I just can't remember exactly where the boobs are. It's, but there's boobs in it for sure. And he's like, okay, cool. I want to see boobs. And we had started in like the middle of a season at first because he didn't want to start from the first episode or something. And Daenerys is in, like, we're watching Dany's side of the story, and he's like, I have got to see this. I have got to see Dany's boobs. I've got to see them. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure she'll show him at some point. And then like he said, no, listen. He said, Garrett, where did they show the boobs previously? You got to find this for me. And I was like, I don't remember. And then we went back later and watched the first because then he was into it. Once he got into it, he understood the lore and he had enough boobs to placate him. He was happy, and now he was watching it and he was totally into it. And then he said, okay, now I want to go back and watch it from the first episode. And like in the first episode, Daenerys is getting naked, and he's like, why didn't you tell me about this? And I was like, I forgot. He was like, I was begging you episode after episode to tell me when the boobs happen, and it happens in the first episode. He was so mad. We're no longer friends. Our friendship ended after that. So we all make mistakes. I'm just kidding. Anyway, but that's a true story. Just friendship did not end over that. What can I say? I'm more of a lore guy. The free folk do not kneel. But anyway, my point with all that was like, dude, that was totally a show that normies had no awareness of until like season 2.5. Nobody knew about Game of Thrones. It was the nerds. It was the nerds that spread awareness of the Game of Thrones. And it was coupled with the pornographic tendencies of HBO. Those were the combined offensives that led to the word of mouth popularity. And then Game of Thrones was a phenomenon. But see, this is the thing Amazon forgot when they made Rings of Power, is they forgot that you still need us nerds. You still need us once in a while. You think you don't. But how are you going to get the word out if we're not talking about it? You won't. Is that changed to you kneel to know Waman? That almost sounds dangerously close to D-Day Cobra, aka Jeremy's character of Jeremy Osteen. Have you seen this? If any Cobra Cast watchers out there, any Snake Pit attendees in the crew today? I love what he does, Jeremy Osteen, the Wah Man. Everyone thinks it, and he says it's super cringe as hell. I was like, agreed. No, it's horrible, but I love it. I think it is the most incredibly thing I've ever seen, says Rita. Yes, exactly. Yes, indeed. Wrangler, I hear boobs, so I came back to the keyboard. Well, this is I'm sorry to get your hopes up. It's not going to happen this time, Wrangler. Not going to happen this time. What else have I got in the stat? What else am I not watching? So, The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead came out with the Daryl Dixon show. Apparently, this has been running for a while. It's been running for, and I took a look at the first episode, and I will say I've always liked the character of Daryl Dixon. Maybe I'm just not that imaginative, but not only do I think Walking Dead has nothing left to tell, like there is no story left to tell in this world. There's just nothing else I want to see. It's like, oh, he's in Paris now. Well, who cares? It's zombie Paris, which is basically just like zombie Atlanta, which is basically just like zombie everywhere else. So like, why do I care? But there are some characters that aren't bad. There's some possibilities that are mildly interesting. I just feel like it's, oh, look, zombie world and another human fascist dictatorship. Okay. There's nothing new to tell in this universe. I just can't get into it. And also Daryl, while I like him, he's a very kind of stoic, I don't give a shit kind of character. I like when, that people are trying to convince him about a cause and he's like, not my problem, I'm out. I'm like, okay, well, he's a consistent character and he's pretty cool. And I love Norman Reedus's performance of the character. There's zombies in it. What do you want? Like they're slow. I watched on Jeremy's recommendation, actually, I watched Dawn of the Dead. I had never seen it. It is a pretty good movie. And something I like about that movie? The zombies run. The zombies run after you. And when they get you, they seem to be pretty damn devastating. Like they are strong. One of them is hard to deal with in that movie. And I thought, see, this is the problem with The Walking Dead is they're so slow. It's like that old comedian joke. How do you escape a zombie? You just walk faster. And I'm telling you, about half the time the zombies swarm them, it's because they did a cheap camera trick where the camera's pointing here and the zombie just comes from over here. It's like if I were sitting right here in this chair and I was like, yep, there are no zombies in this room. And then a zombie immediately, it's like, well, if I had a periphery, I would see that the zombie was there. Well, what's that movement in the corner? Oh, it's a zombie. So they play cheap camera tricks. So I just, I watched one episode of it. There's another guy that's got a vendetta against Daryl. Who cares? And then there's another show. It's on HBO. It's called Our Flag Means Death. And it's about the pirate Stede Bonnet, who is a real pirate. And you know me, I love... I just slipped into like a southern, you know me, I love a good pirate yarn. I do. I like a good tall ship story. I like a good nautical tale. Really gets the blood pumping. However, there is something off-putting to me about the marketing of this show. It looks like it's tongue-in-cheek. It looks like it's a sort of dark comedy version of Pirates, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And you know what it feels like? It feels like a subversion of the Pirate of the Caribbean kind of story. I'm not talking about Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm talking about the historical Pirates of the Caribbean. I feel like it is for a modern audience kind of dark comedy reimagining. And it's like, I just don't want to see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch the first episode. I'll give it the 5-minute rule. And we'll see how we do. Because I could be wrong. It could be one of the best things I've ever seen. But look, I've already seen one of the best pirate shows of all time, which was Black Sails. Black Sails was incredible. Like, if you want a really good pirate show, it's Black Sails. It's got murder and it's got violence. It's got sword fights. It's got ship fights. It's got all kinds of great shit. It's got historical characters. It's got fantasy characters. But it's not a fantasy show. It's like a historical period piece about the pirates, the golden age of piracy. It's fantastic. It's got a rather surprising amount of historical accuracy, and quite cleverly, it functions as a prequel to the book Treasure Island, because it tells the story of like how Long John Silver, not in a, it's not like jumping the shark. It's not like this is literally the purpose of the story. But it just happens to establish the backstory of Treasure Island, and in a pretty brilliant way, I have to say. So I find it hard to believe that Our Flag Means Death is going to beat that. I just don't think it's going to. I think I saw Oh, yes. Wrangler has an important point on the subject, which is boobs, bacon, and coffee. The 3 best ways to get my attention. Well, that just means you're a red-blooded man. Readout says, this stream should be rechristened What the Captain is Not Watching Today. I know. Perhaps this is dereliction of duty. Perhaps the captain is liable for court-martial. Not doing my duty for the channel. And so I shall remedy that situation for the next stream. I'm just telling you, like, folks, it's tough out there. It is tough out there to find good stuff to watch. And listen, I don't want to come on this channel and just like download more garbage about Loki onto you. I just feel like you get enough of that. If you want me to watch Loki, I'll watch it. But I just feel like, man, what else can you say about these Disney? It's so soul crushing. Every single one of them. And like, that's kind of surprising to me because in theory, there's different showrunners for each of those shows. There's different writers. I mean, in theory, just by accident, they should have a different type of show. But I'm telling you right now, what stunned me is that Ahsoka's dialogue is almost identical to the way the dialogues are in Secret Invasion. Identical. They talk in circles. They mulch over things we already know, and they're in bars or they're just sitting and and there's pauses. There's these long pauses all the time. And it's like, dude, so do I want the Loki version of circular dialogue with long pauses? Do I want the Dave Filoni version of circular dialogue with long pauses? Or do I want the MCU version of circular dialogue with long pauses? Like, what do I want? The Dead are dude, I was a huge Walking Dead fan when it first came out. Like the first few seasons, I was into it. I was super into it. I loved it. I thought it had a kind of Night of the Living Dead vibe to it. It was cool. I just think it's gone on too long. It's gone on way too long. And there's just not that many. There's only so many stories you can tell in an apocalyptic setting. The interesting thing about a post-apocalyptic setting is it is, on the one hand, a super primal and super interesting setup for almost any kind of a story. But I think it's a short-lived kind of story because really there's two things going on in a post-apocalyptic story. You have the character journey of survival. It is in many ways, it's a kind of monster in the house story. No matter what the different, situation is, it's almost always a monster in the house kind of story because they're fleeing from raiders or they're fleeing from, the smokers in the case of Waterworld. Like it's something, right? Or it's the zombies, whatever it is. So the audience is naturally going to be interested in either solving it, the ray of hope. In the case of a Walking Dead story, I think, usually, well, there's a pretty good one, which is The Stand on Paramount Plus. They remade The Stand based on the Stephen King novel in a limited series, and it's mostly pretty good. But, the thrust of the story is rebuilding civilization and saving humanity. If it's not about saving humanity, well, then it's just a soap opera about the characters. And there is some mileage you can get out of that. But like 6 series? Come on, folks. I think we're pushing it here. I think there's at least 6, right? Because there's the original Walking Dead. There's Fear the Walking Dead. There's that young adult teenager Walking Dead show. I forget what it's called. I think it's a Walking Dead World or something. Now we got Daryl Dixon. And then we've got Negan and Maggie in the New York one. So we got 5, and I think there's more on the way, by the way. So we've got 5 Walking Dead series. I'm like, folks, there ain't that much mileage in this universe. I don't know where they're getting it. Readout. So I could be, show me something. I would love to be wrong about that, by the way. I would love to be wrong about it. Readout says, I enjoy Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead for being tied to local history for me, but otherwise not a zombie fan. Never got into Walking Dead Last of Us craze in 2010s. I played a little of the Last of Us game, and I thought that in the game and the world and the setup, I thought the game was pretty brilliant, the first game. And I really love the cordyceps concept. That, to me, is the most interesting zombie concept I've ever heard for a lot of reasons. And that's one I could get into. And one of the things I like about the cordyceps concept is the zombies evolve. The zombies are able to increase their threat level. That's pretty brilliant. And that, by the way, is a layup. That's a layup for a series because it means that every season the threat can get more dire, which is fun. I think that's really fun. And I'm going to tell you something. That HBO series was a pile of garbage. That HBO series was garbage. Oh, Pedro Pascal, who gets stabbed in the gut about 50 times in that stupid show. That show's so stupid. And and Mahler, who I greatly admire Mahler. Don't get it twisted. And he's right even when I disagree with him. But he's wrong about this one. He likes that show. And I'm like, dude, you are so wrong on this. That show is such, they wasted every level of that concept. You almost never see a damn zombie in that stupid show. There's almost never, there's like one scene where you get to see Joel kick ass, and it's the sniper scene. It's like the only scene where he really ever kicks ass, and it's awesome. I just tired of that. I'm so disappointed because the first scene in The Last of Us show was excellent. And I was glued. I was absolutely glued to it, which is when the scientists are talking about the fungus and some of the flashbacks. Actually, I would say all the scenes involving the science of the fungus and the cordyceps, I loved it. I was like, dude, this is primo sci-fi. This is excellent science fiction right here. I'm super into this. And then what do we get? Then we get, Frank's gay love story, apropos of nothing. And then we get this really just boring lesbian romance story in the mall with Bella Ramsey, who's playing, what's the name of the character? What's the name of the damn character in Last? I can't remember. What the devil are these kids playing these days on the video games? Anyway, so Bella, I can't remember her character. Bella Ramsey's character is she's having a lesbian teen romance in this mall, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't believe they just did another gay bottle episode. And I'm thinking, but it doesn't advance the main story. That's the problem with it. That's my criticism. It doesn't do anything to advance the story. And then I went, now, is this even in the original? And so I went and I researched it. Well, it turns out that is from the video game. It's from a downloadable content. But when I actually read what the downloadable the DLC was about, it was about Bella. What the hell's the name? What? Main character in Last of Us. It's driving me crazy. Ellie. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you, Internet, for helping solve my blockage. Oh no. I shouldn't have said it that way. Anyway. So Ellie is trapped in this mall and she's trying to get medicine for Joel, and she's having to fight all these zombies by herself, alone in this mall in order to save Joel's life. And while that's happening, she's having flashbacks to this romance, right? Now that was kind of interesting. And I was like, now that's not bad. But what does the show do? The show got rid of the whole part about her like searching through the mall, which would have been kind of interesting and exciting. And instead just had her kind of, she's kind of looking around for stuff in a town. Most of the show is just her in this flashback in the mall because they just wanted to have the lesbian romance. That's all they cared about. So in other words, they discarded the most interesting thing from the game because all they cared about was, we just want to have lesbian teenagers. And that's what bothers me about it. It's like, no, you could have had an interesting story there, but you didn't. So yeah, I hate The Last of Us. They wasted such a good concept with that show. Wrangler says, only zombie flick I got into was Zombieland. I saw Zombieland. Cardio. That's how you survive the apocalypse. Hey, should we talk about Gen V? I've been watching Gen V. Are you still out there, Fu Man Blue? He's my fellow Gen V watcher. There may not be anyone else watching this one. So there was an interesting thing that happens in the latest episode of Gen V. There he is. There's Fu Man Blue. GFGFNV. You want to know something really cool about like the first, I would say, 10 minutes of this latest episode? Are we on episode 4 or 5? I think we're on episode 5 now of Gen V. And it opens up with they are trapped in the mind of Kate. Kate is the one that can control people's minds, and she can make them forget things, and she can make them, I don't know if she can implant memories or beliefs, but she can do a temporary mind control. So she can be like, she can command someone to kill themselves, and then they kill themselves, right? But it's very taxing, and like if she uses her power even a little bit, she's kind of in trouble. So if she uses it twice, she's really pushing it. If she uses it 3 times in a scene, she's almost dead, which is pretty damn good. I've said this before about Gen V. Astonishingly, it is able to use and establish the rules of superhuman powers more interestingly and more cleverly than anything I've seen in recent MCU or DC films or TV shows, which is a travesty. That is a crime against superhero fiction. That this show is better at this than the current Marvel or DC product. But what are you gonna do? So that's number 1. Right away, she has this godlike power. She can tell anyone she wants to totally forget anything. They can lose any amount of time, and she can tell them to do anything and they'll have to do it. But she can use it about this much before she's practically dead, which I think pretty good. That's pretty good. So we start out in the beginning of the episode. 4 of the other characters are trapped in her mind, okay? And they're wandering around in her mind, and it was amazing to me how they were immediately able to establish danger because they run into a figment of her imagination, which happens to be Soldier Boy, as Jensen Ackles makes a cameo. By the way, Dave Filoni, this is how you do a cameo and have it make sense. So Jensen Ackles shows up as she was her imaginary boyfriend, and he makes that very clear. And cough button. Got a frog in my throat today. So he shows up and he basically explains in a very clever piece of dialogue that they are in her memories and that her memory, she is dying, her brain is collapsing, and so parts of her mind are collapsing with it. And so this bolt of lightning comes down from nowhere and disintegrates Soldier Boy right after he says, "I'm your only hope to get out of here." And then bam, it just electrocutes him, he disintegrates, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so this is like a 5-minute scene. Okay. The characters don't know where they are. They don't know how they got there. But within 5 minutes, they figured out they're in her mind. They figured out she is dying, which means they might die with her. And then third, they encounter other characters in her mind and immediately are able to figure out, okay, these are projections of her mind and they represent aspects of her personality and her memories. And as they die, so can the characters that are trapped in her mind. And I just thought, now how interesting, after having watched that stupid Ahsoka episode and the world between worlds, and it's like, is this Anakin? Is this not Anakin? Is this a ghost? Is this not a ghost? Is this a memory? Is this a dream? Is this something real that's in between space and time? Is this the afterlife? Is this purgatory before it? Like, we don't know any of that. And we don't understand any of the rules. We don't know what's at stake. And it's like, now here is an example of a show that's able to do this within 5 minutes. And it's not done with clunky info dumps. It's done with clever, it's actually a hilarious scene between them and Soldier Boy, this imaginary Soldier Boy, that establishes all the rules, explains where we are and what's at stake, while also having a clever dialogue about, who she idolized as a kid and stuff like that. It's like a really good episode of being trapped in someone's mind. And trust me, I have a very high bar for these because I get annoyed with we're trapped in someone else's, even in like Star Trek. Star Trek does these kinds of episodes all the time, or used to. And sometimes I just would get annoyed with them. I just be like, oh, I just don't care. I don't care about all the dumb rules about the mind. But sometimes it's done well. And in this show it was. So, and then it looks like Luke and Luke and Cricket, aka Emma, I believe her name is, got together, and it was adorable. Although I have a complaint. Yeah, oh my god, I say it's adorable because I just like these characters and I wanted them to get together. Oh, I'm shipping them. Okay, I admit it. I'm shipping these characters. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. I'm ashamed of myself. But at the same time, now, I also noticed something that just drove me crazy, which is so Emma and Luke get together, okay, and they're doing the big nasty. All right, it's his first time, and she is in the 100% driver's seat like the whole time. So basically, she has the initiative in all situations. And but what really irritated me. Well, there you could argue that this makes sense because number one, he's a virgin, she isn't. So, and he says, "Show me," and she obliges, which all that makes sense in a character. And also, he's been locked in a loony bin for a bunch of time, so he's a little bit, let's just say, out of the loop on things. So, okay. But here's where it breaks down, right? Because I've told you before, this is the woke show that is the exception that proves the rule, that woke shows suck. And by the way, that expression, the exception that proves the rule, there is some debate about what exactly it means. But the definition I'm using is what I think is the most accepted definition, which is if there is a rule, then an exception to that rule proves that it exists. Because if the rule didn't exist, there would be no need for the exception, which is the definition I am using when I'm using that phrase. So this is a woke show that actually works for the most part, but it is woke, folks. And so how there's all of these like modern, like you have to sign a consent form, to have sex in the modern world. It's like, okay, here's your sworn affidavit that this is consensual. And then for the next stage of the act, here's the second affidavit. And then here is the, it's like, well, this show basically commits this idea to screen because she says, okay, is it okay if I touch you there? Okay, cool. Is this okay if I touch you here? Is it okay if we do this next? And I'm like, oh my God. Way to suck all of the fun and enjoyment out of just being human. She has to she literally has to get his verbal authorization for everything she's doing to him. And I'm like, oh my God. The world we live in, folks. I'm not saying that consent is not important. Don't misunderstand. Yes, absolutely. Consenting adults. No, that's not my point. My point is literally like we're in the middle here. And you're saying like, I'm pretty sure the dude's okay if you touch him there. I'm just saying, it's just a shot in the dark. I can't speak for any man, but I'm just saying that is likely a yes. I'm just saying that is possibly a yes. What have we come to? Is this what the ladies want? This is what the ladies want now. The ladies want you to verbally get verbal authorization at 5-second intervals all the way through. There is the only way that the woke mind virus truly is a virus, because the only way a virus can survive is to infect another cell and replicate more of itself. It doesn't have any other mechanism of survival. And I think how fitting that the wokies need constant propaganda all the time to reinforce their dumb beliefs about everything. It's like there are 67 genders, which is why we have to have an article come out every day explaining why those are genders and how you have to use them and how to use these them zer and d dem there and all those different, like how to use them in a sentence. All these dumb TikTok videos. It's a Gundam always has all these dumb TikTok videos about, let me explain how to use demon pronouns. It's like, well, of course you need a freaking daily reminder of what to believe, what to think, what to ask, what not to ask, what is okay to say, what is not okay you need a daily download of all this garbage in order to keep it in your brain long enough for it not to naturally expire because it's such bullshit. And I just think this show is just like that. It's like, okay, here's a demonstration of how literally getting consent for every single part of the act of coitus works. For all you young people who are wondering how that would work. It's like, gee, that doesn't sound very romantic. Why? That's where you're wrong, Sonny Jim. It's very romantic. And here's how it would look. It's like nobody does this. Even the wokest of the wokey doesn't really do this. Oh, sure. Maybe once in a while, just, just so they could just feel good about themselves. They say, oh, I remember learning about this in my gender studies school. So I'm going to say, is it okay if I now do this? And it's like, but then you know what? I bet 5 minutes later, all that shit goes out the window. Nobody remembers that 5 minutes later. It's like, what is it about? Anybody read Eckhart Tolle? Eckhart Tolle has a book. It's called The Power of Now. He has another book called A New Earth. Great books. They get a bit pedantic at times, but I do think he points out one interesting thing, which is all this garbage. It's not us, folks. It's not us as in humans. It's not us. Okay. Yes, it is. It's a product of our minds, but it is the ego, is what it is. The ego is the part of our personality. It's the part of our mind that goes around labeling things. We all have it. We all do it. It's not one side or the other side. This is a universal human truth. We have an ego, and the ego exists to go make rules for everything, right? Big, small, inconsequential, extremely significant. The ego goes around making rules and observations and opinions and judgments and labels about literally everything all the time. And when this goes too far, as it pretty much frequently does with humans, it leads to a kind of insanity. Okay, and this is what has happened to the Wokies. This is a mental insanity, and this is not specific to any one side. We all live in a level of insanity. Like, let's just face it. Being human is a bit insane to begin with. So this is not me picking on the Wokies in particular. I'm just saying this is how we got here, right? This is the ego run absolutely insane. It's constructing all these crazy things that don't exist in nature. It's like in nature, like Victoria's Secret, okay, has just discovered that in nature, certain things are attractive and certain things are less attractive. And that's all I have to say about that. Fu Man Blue, what do you think? Oh yeah, you said the Jensen Ackles. By the way, Jensen Ackles Soldier Boy is excellent. He is probably my favorite super in the entire show. He just absolutely, he's got this voice. He doesn't sound like him. He's got this really like as a friend of mine would say, this really crispy voice. Like he's just super old and just grouchy, but he's not. He's just got this. He's just excellent. He's excellent as a character. He's basically like Captain America, if Captain America were a total asshole, which is pretty much all the characters in The Boys. If Superman were an asshole, you'd get Homelander. If Batman were an asshole, well, Batman kind of is an asshole. But if he were even worse asshole, you get Noir. So yeah, that was a great cameo. Yeah, exactly. Fu Man Blue says, yeah, at first they think they are witnessing her past, but then they start seeing stuff that happened to each of them. And it was like, okay, this is finally something different. And so they're talking about when they were in Kate's mind and they start discovering all the memories that she was suppressing from them. And what was cool about that scene too, is that they each had to live through kind of a moment of their life where they had committed a sin, a kind of moral sin, a betrayal. They had done something selfish. I'm telling you, this show continues to be really good at this. Gen V continues to be really good at telling a interesting, complex story about these young adults at this university and kind of wrestling with, the selfish side of their nature and then the good and generous side of their nature. And there's a kind of level of innocence and a level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever the antithesis of, what is the antithesis? There's a level of sin and a level of innocence to all of these characters. And it tends to make them really likable and interesting. And I'm really surprised by that. I kind of thought the show was going to be all about Marie and maybe one or two other characters. It actually works as a pretty damn good ensemble cast. It's like The Boys does X-Men First Class. It really is like the Boys does X-Men First Class, and it works pretty damn well. The superpowers are super interesting to watch them interact with each other and how they affect the personalities. Fu Man Blue says, not wildly original, but innovative for a change rather than 100% of recycled stories and plot lines. I tend to think, well, I mean, I tend to think they're pretty innovative with how they explore superpowers. I really do. I think they explore the effect of superpowers. And let's face it, the fact that it's a dark look at superheroes a lot, gives them some more freedom, like The Watchmen. This is a story that is able to explore the dark side of the superhero myth. And that does give them an edge because they're able to explore the really evil things that superpowers can do. Like, obviously, the guy that has the ability to, blank out someone's mind. Well, what does he do? He uses it to get, to basically lure chicks to his room to do bad things to him. And it's like, so they have every superpower has this dark side that it's used for. And that gives them kind of an edge. But even aside from that, when the characters actually fight each other, it's quite fun to watch them figure out ways to beat each other with. And it, what's interesting about it too is as often as they execute like a really interesting or really deadly attack, they totally fall flat on their face or use their power in a way that totally backfires. I think that's pretty interesting because, like, let's just take lightsabers as an example. If those things were real, 9 out of 10 lightsaber students would chop an arm off inside of 5 minutes. Dude, if I had one of those, I would chop my arm off inside of 5 minutes. I'd be like, bzz, oh, this is pretty cool. Bzz. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Oh, somebody call an ambulance. And so the superpowers in Gen V are kind of like that. They're kind of like that. It's like, okay, if you really had superpowers, guess what you'd probably accidentally do inside of a minute. And then they actually have a pretty cool high stakes ending for this episode. I loved when they finally reveal, which paging Dave Filoni, attention Dave Filoni. At the end of this episode, they reveal what's actually going on in this secret, super insane asylum that they're running underneath the school, which they call the Woods. They reveal what's going on and what is being developed, and it is wicked cool. It is wicked awesome, and it blows open the whole world in terms of the implications. And I kind of hope that this has ramifications for the main series as well. I kind of hope this has ramifications for Butcher's story in The Boys, because I think it could be that good. I really do. Fu Man Blue says, I skipped over the sex scene, so I didn't catch that. Well, give it another watch. Fu Man Blue is, he has a tender soul. Some things are just too intense, too hot for TV. Well, I thought, aside from the woke bullshit, I actually thought it was a pretty good scene between her and Luke. It was it was a young love kind of thing. I think it was fine. I also think Shetty, who is the dean of the school, I think she is a female villain done really well. That being said, I think we are all full up on female villains these days. I've quite enjoyed the surfeit of female villains that we have. That being said, can we take a break? Can we? Oh, we can't. Oh, we can't because we must have maximum girl bossery in every single thing. Okay. All right. Fine. That being said, if we are to have another female villain, she's actually pretty interesting because, it's the first episode. I pretty much have this babe figured out. I'm like, I know exactly what she wants. She is a power hungry mad woman, just like what was her name that Elizabeth Shue plays in the first season? I pretty much figured she was another version of that, where she's just a power hungry boss bitch who's just got to have all the power. And then within like an episode, that kind of shifted. And it's like, no, she's playing a deeper game. What is she up to? Then it turns out she's lying to Vought and she's working against Vought. And I thought, well, this is pretty interesting. And then in this episode, it's like, well, I don't know that she's even up against Vought. I think she might just be hatching a scheme that is totally apart from all of that, which is pretty cool. So she's a really interesting character. She's very complex. She has no superpowers, which I think was a brilliant choice for her character because there's a real sense of tension and I would say danger, a real sense of peril. Whenever she's in the presence of the supers, I get the feeling that she's walking a dangerous line because, she's in the presence of literal people that could brainwash her. She's in the presence of people that could crush her in their hand. And yet she's able to kind of use this phony compassion that you sense there's a grain of truth to her compassion. I sense a grain of truth to her compassion, but she uses it like a weapon. She uses her kind of knowledge and experience, her position of power and authority, but also her compassion with these superheroes to manipulate them, to do things, and to believe her when she's telling flat out lies. I think that is just deadly interesting about her character. And this is how you do a really good female supervillain. She uses her mind, her cleverness, and her compassion and her empathy to manipulate these dangerously powerful students into doing her bidding or not doing her bidding or just doing whatever it is she wants them to do. I had a funny thought. When I was watching it too. This latest episode of Gen V, I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking, this show is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch these characters working their way into and out of these predicaments. And I thought, I get the feeling that the writers and the filmmakers, the director, the actors, I get the feeling they're having fun. I get the feeling they're having fun writing these episodes. Like they're into this and they're enjoying it. And I thought, what an odd notion to cross my mind, because that should be the expectation of every show. You should, if anyone's writing a show, they should be enjoying it. They should be having fun. You watch these, even Ahsoka, which is, Filoni's darling. He's just going around trying to make Ahsoka the bet. Did he really have to stuff every single Clone Wars and Rebels character into Ahsoka? Really? Did he have to stuff it? But even so, I get the feeling that he's going through the motions. He doesn't even seem to be enjoying. He doesn't seem to be writing anything where there's any joy or life to it. And I know that there was that element in Rebels and Clone Wars, and I get this feeling with Secret Invasion. I get this feeling with what the hell was Loki? I get this feeling with all of these shows that the Flash, the movies that come out, the Flash. I get this feeling that the writers that are making this stuff are bored. I get the feeling that they don't even like these characters because they don't. Kurtzman Trek. They don't like these characters. They don't enjoy it. It's like, was it really Akiva Goldsman's dream to preside over a show in which Klingons dance and sing to autotune? Was that really his life's work? I don't believe that for a second. They don't give a shit about these characters. But when I watch Gen V, I get the feeling they enjoy this. They're having fun writing interesting scenarios with these supers interacting. And it's not just the woke parts of it. I think they enjoy the superhero story of it, because this is definitely not quite as anti-superhero as the actual Boys proper is. This show is a little bit more sympathetic towards the superpowered characters. Well, I mean, all the protagonists are superpowered characters, which is different than the Boys. The Boys is all about the humans trying to take the supes down. So this show seems to actually be having fun with superheroes. I'm like, now, why the hell can't Disney hire some writers who enjoy writing superhero stories the way that these writers appear to write this show? I enjoy writing this show. It was just weird. It's weird. Fu Man Blue says, in my rewrite of Star Wars, has Anakin actually losing all those limbs slowly through the course of training. Oh, okay. You don't mean like a slow torture. Okay, good. Okay. Gee, I went to a dark place there. like Obi-Wan just takes his time with him. Obi-Wan just we're gonna take that one. I hate you. Oh, that's gonna cost you the other arm. That's not what Fu Man Blue meant. What Fu Man Blue meant was, over the span of years, Darth Vader lost another limb here, another limb there, had to have an iron lung put in after one mission. I dig it. No, I like that. And look, here's the deal. I think that probably in Lucas's mind, that was kind of the way it went. Because it's implied from Obi-Wan Kenobi's original dialogue that he's now more machine than man. And it sort of implies that that's what happened. But I think when you set out to write a story, you set out to tell the story in one film of how Anakin fell to the dark side and how Vader came to be, I think he just went for it. This is what happened. And that was probably more because of the medium of film. That's something you'd have to do. You can do that with novels and you can do that with a series. I don't think that's as easy to do with a film saga, though. Wrangler says, can we have ChatGPT rewrite Star Wars in the style of Dr. Seuss? Well, you could. The question is, but we'd have to consider whether we should, Wrangler. We'd have to consider that. So it's slim pickings out there, folks. When Gen V is like the best thing. Oh, by the way, I felt like such a dumbass because like I did the Continental review and I was like, was that the end of the season? Well, yes, it was. That it was a 3-episode season. It was a 3-episode limited series. I don't know if there's going to be a season 2 or if that's the end of it. I think that's the end of it. It was just 3 episodes, limited series. It's pretty damn good. A pretty bananas ending. Pretty absolutely crazy John Wick action. Dude, they absolutely went through every floor of that hotel and turned it into its own kind of bloodbath, which I thought was pretty amazing. So the Continental. But I felt so dumb after that stream because, okay, yeah. So that was the end. But I mean, I did watch the episode and think that looks like a season finale to me. That being said, I think you still could have told more of a tale because they end it with Winston shooting one of the agents of the High Table right in the head in broad daylight, which was badass and baller as hell. And I thought, well, see, now that could set up another couple of episodes. But I don't think it undermines my original point because my point in bringing that up was that they were able to tell in 3 episodes more of a story than Ahsoka or Secret Invasion and like Boba Fett and like 3 or 4 other Disney shows were able to tell combined in an entire season. And that doesn't undermine my point, I don't think, because look, if you only have 3 episodes of content, then just make 3 episodes. Don't try to stretch. You know what Disney would have done if they were making the Continental? I mean, they wouldn't because it's a violent John Wick story, but just for the sake of argument, if they were making the Continental, they would have stretched it out into 8 episodes and you would have wound up with an Andor, right? Where it's like you basically have a 3-episode story and you're trying to spread it out into 8 episodes. And that's why you're getting these slow, it's a slow burn. No, it's not. It's just slow. This is my problem with Andor because Andor really should have been, I think Andor should have been a 3-episode limited series, just like, and you could make them 1.5-hour episodes if you wanted. You could do 3 1.5-hour episodes, 3 90-minute episodes, a limited series, Andor. Would have been great. Frankly, I think you take the 3rd episode of Andor with some of the elements of the next couple episodes. You then do, that's episode 1. You then do the prison escape, which also includes Stellan Skarsgård's brilliant spy story. That's episode 2. And then episode 3 is the final episode of Andor on the planet with that. Some people really hated this. I really liked it. The funeral procession and that kind of crazy, like just confluence of all the stories coming together and coming to a head and a kind of mini rebellion sparking. I thought that was good. That was one of the few parts of Andor I really enjoyed. So I think that would be your story. Those 3 essential elements, and then you cut out all the garbage. So the Continental did this correctly. There was not enough story for an entire season, so they made it 3 episodes. It's a limited series. It told an interesting little story about how Winston came to be the leader of the Continental, and there you go. Told the origin story of Sharon and their friendship, which I actually think that seeing that beginning of Winston and Sharon's friendship really did twist the knife for John Wick 4 when Charon meets his end, and Sharon. I think they pronounce it Sharon. It looks like, well, Sharon is fine. Anyway, I watched John Wick 4 again recently. I have to say, I really, really like a lot of John Wick 4, but I watched it again and I said, I hate to say it. I hate to say it, folks, but Keanu Reeves is slowing down a bit in those fight scenes. Like, there were just a couple of those fight scenes in John Wick 4 when it seemed like he was trying to catch up to like some of the other actors. And I did feel like a couple of the scenes were suffering a little bit because of it. The action sequences in John Wick 4 are so spectacular, but also there was a couple of just elements of it that are like just a couple plot holes here and there. He falls out of so many 5-story buildings in that. I'm like, he gets hit by so many cars. I'm like, dude, you're killing me. I got to be able to believe this guy can do some of this, okay? But dude, Donnie Yen in that 4th John Wick movie is spectacular. Is it Bill Skarsgård who plays the villain in that one? There's too many Skarsgårds. Yeah, Bill Skarsgård. He is so freaking good in John Wick 4. I love his character of the Marquis. I love the character of Nobody. But Donnie Yen as the blind assassin, his story, his friendship, which it's almost a buddy love story. The 4th John Wick installment is almost a buddy love story with Donnie Yen and John Wick, who are old friends who now have to kill each other. Donnie Yen has been forced by a marker to kill John Wick. And the way that those two interact throughout the whole movie is brilliant. And for those that don't know, I'm talking about buddy love, which is one of the Blake Snyder genres. It does not mean, look, don't get excited, blue hairs. That does not literally mean love. It means friendship is what it means. It can be a buddy love story, can be a romantic story, a love story, but it's not. Buddy love just means buddies, like Riggs and Murtaugh in Lethal Weapon. So it's actually a pretty good buddy love story between Donnie Yen and John Wick's character. Kane is the character. He's got the best action scenes in the whole movie. I hate to say it, folks, but he's got the best action scenes in the whole movie. What he's able to do to bad guys with doorbells is fucking amazing. And just that scene where they're sitting in the church talking. Oh, John Wick 4. Anyway, so my point about the Continental is it enhanced my experience of watching John Wick 4 again. And I appreciate that. The captain appreciates that. Star Fury says, good night. Good night, Star Fury. Thank you for joining us for another exciting voyage. We're probably in we are in the twilight hours of the stream. We are in the dog watch now. We're in overtime, just chewing the fat a little. But thanks for popping by. I don't know quite what to make of a blast. A blast of the pack and the hunter was whacked in the Sarlacc. Well, Wrangler, everyone has their special gift. Dude, you got a YouTube video there. 12-minute YouTube video. That video we watched earlier, which is What If Force Awakens Were Good by Prism. One of the things I liked about that was how he used the AI art to kind of give you a visual. Now, some of them were a little bit wonky. Some of them were way out there. Occasionally, I'm like, that's not even Leia. But it was cool. Mostly, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to have that kind of visual element to go with the story. And I'm thinking, I'll tell you what, that's not a bad way to pitch a series. That's not a bad way to pitch a movie to an executive. If you've got like 5 minutes to pitch your idea, instead of doing a storyboard, you could do that kind of visual narration with AI art. So I'm kind of with Shad of Shadiversity on this. I don't think AI is all bad. In fact, a friend of mine was kind of, blackpilling a little bit about AI and how it's going to take our jobs, and it's going to take some of our jobs. Let's just face it. But on the other hand, what used to be one of the most valuable professions in any town for like hundreds of years of human civilization, like the kind of profession you could not do without in every single city. It was the chandler. That is the candle maker. The candle maker was one of the most important professions in human history for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now the candle maker only exists for, crate and barrel. Like it doesn't exist for any other reason now. So my point is, new technologies mean new opportunities. And I think that would be pretty cool to pitch your script using AI art to go with your narration. Could be pretty rad. Now, on the other hand, AI is terrifying as hell because it's beginning to learn how to fake reality, and that is terrifying. So there is that. Well, there you have it, folks. So I think, the captain's going to have to step up his game. For the next stream, I'll have my report, the captain's report on Our Flag Means Death. I mean, come on. It is literally a swords and sails story. I'm legally obligated to watch it, okay? But I'm just afraid it's going to be woke as shit. Stede Bonnet's a fascinating historical character, though. Stede Bonnet, he's basically a merchant. He was a merchant who that's all he did. He was basically a bean counter. He was a bean counter. He was a seller of wares, and he was like, dude, these pirates are out there making a killing. Because he was a fence for pirates. He would buy and sell their stolen loot, and he was essentially, in modern day terms, he was kind of like a money launderer who took a look at the mob and was like, they're the ones making all the money. I could do that. So he basically was like, I'll try out life as a pirate. He knew nothing about sailing ships. He knew nothing about navigation, but he did have money. He had money so he's basically a rich merchant who decides to try it. It's a little bit of a Breaking Bad story when you think about it. So a real life kind of Breaking Bad story. So he had no business being a pirate, but he kind of was figuring it out as he went. So he is an interesting character. Assassin's Creed Black Flag actually had him in Assassin's Creed. So he's a character in that video game. So, and that's what the show is about. The show is about Stede Bonnet. So it could be interesting. It could be. But if it's woke, I'm out. If it's woke, I'm gone. Then we've got, South Park Into the Panda. Oh my God, South Park Into the Pandaverse. I believe that is coming out this week, folks. That is 27th. So that's Friday. Friday next. Maybe the captain will do a special edition of the Captain's Cast to do a watch party. Maybe we'll do a watch party. It's going to be on Paramount Plus. So don't forget, we are linked in the Discord. The Discord link is in the description, as is my link to my nautical sword and sails adventure stories, Blood and Oak, 2 books in the series so far. And check it out if you feel like it. And like and subscribe to the channel. We are the Swords and Starships channel, and we are growing rapidly. And our crew has a lot of room for expansion, and as the Joker once said. And so we are recruiting. So I hope you've enjoyed this stream. I hope you've enjoyed this journey. I've enjoyed chatting with you. And do check out that Prism series on the What If Star Wars sequel trilogy was good. He rewrites all 3 episodes, and he uses all of the elements that were kind of on the table, but he rearranges them in a brilliant way that mostly fixes the story and makes it pretty good. At the very least, it gives it the right emotional core, and it's pretty excellent. So hat tip to the chat. Wrangler, Fu Man Blue, Readout Productions, Eric Marr, Star Fury, Tom. I don't know why I always pronounce Star Fury like a pompous British captain, but I just said Star Fury. Star Fury. And who else was in the chat? We had such a great chat tonight. I don't want to miss anybody. Steven was in the chat. Bellyman was in the chat. Thanks to all, and to any I missed. Rumble, YouTube, and X/Twitter. Wrangler says, have a great night, everyone. Have a great night. Have a great week, folks. Let us make this an excellent week. And the captain will have full reports. We're not going to do another not watching. I'll watch everything. I'll just watch it all. I'll watch Killers of the Flower Moon. I'll check that one out. I don't know why, but I think what I'll do is I'll watch Loki, but not so we can do a deep dive. We're not going to do a deep dive on Loki, but I'll watch Loki so that when I'm watching the Shills watch Loki, I'll know what exactly they're reacting to so I can have a better counter reaction to their reaction. It's all very complicated, but it will make sense at the time. I promise. The captain promises. I'm not going to continue with Daryl Dixon. Well, we'll see. Maybe one more episode. It's a walk. No, I don't think so. I don't think no one's talking about The Walking Dead anymore. Nobody is. All right, folks. Well, that is the Captain's Cast. I am your host, Captain Garrett of the channel Swords and Starships. And I do thank you for joining. And I will just say, wherever you are, let me know in the chat, in the comments, how I can bring you more excitement and more entertainment, because my goal here is nothing if not to lift you up and get you pumped for the next week as we build new things, as we push back, as we take back our franchises. Fu Man Blue says good night, all. Good night, Fu Man Blue. Captain Salute. As always, thank you for the very generous Rumble rant. And we had fun. We had fun tonight. And so until next time, this is Captain Garrett saying to you, I will see you out there.